Hello, guys. How are we doing this evening? I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to get in here and stuff. I know this is kind of a weird time for actually going live, but either way, I'll go ahead and introduce my guest. This is Tom Hall. Tom Hall is with Faster Saves Lives, as well as Buckeye Firearms Foundation. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So, and Tom and I have known each other for a while. We've actually taught classes together before in the past, and done a few things here and there. So, but Tom, how are you doing, by the way?
Doing all right. How you doing, Chad?
Good. So, tell me what's been going on in Tom's life before we get into the details here.
Well, since we've talked a lot the last couple of years, I've been a substitute teacher for a couple local school districts here, and that's been pretty cool. Not a lot. I mean, it's funny because when I think about it, not a lot's changed, and then sometimes tons of stuff's changed. As you know, Mom and Dad are both gone now, so
Right.
I'm
Yeah, I
just
was sorry to
here.
hear that.
Well, thank you, but it's been over a year now for Mom and 3 for Dad, so it's kind of
Sure.
crazy. But it's just me here now, me and Isla, my kids. So I raised my son alone, as you know, me and him for 16 years, and he heard me say for his whole life that I always wanted an Irish Wolfhound. And an inexpensive Irish Wolfhound is like $4,000 for a puppy, right? So I was under the impression that he was actually trying to figure out how to get me one. But one day he told me he was trying. He goes, "But Dad, they're just too expensive. I don't think I can do it." I'm like, "Of course not, man. Don't worry about it." And so anyways, in April, my birthday's in April. So early April or late March, I forget. Him and my daughter, Hope, somehow, I don't know the backstory, they found a rescue 3/4 Irish Wolfhound.
Okay.
Somewhere up in like Pike County, Ohio. And so they called me one day when I was working at school and said, "Hey, we're going to get you a birthday Father's Day present, but it's going to be live. Is that okay?" And I was like, yeah, sure. And so later that day, Hope was over here hanging out, and then Zach and the boys were up picking up the dog. And so now I got Isla, she's over there asleep. The Isla, the mixed Irish Wolfhound. She's an escape artist.
Oh, is that the one that you contacted me about that actually got out recently?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I got her back. But she's a little crazy. She's so crazy that she knocked her right rear leg out of the hip socket, and that cost me $500. Yeah, that cost me $530 to get fixed. But it seems to have settled her down. So in the end, it may have been an injury that saved her life, kind of thing.
Well, I mean, I hate to say it's a good thing, but maybe something good come from something.
Right, exactly. And that's what I'm thinking, because now she like follows me around and hangs out, and she doesn't go very far for the most part. The other day, somebody picked her up at Little Caesars and drove her over to Wendy's and they got her breadsticks and a cheeseburger, and finally found me on Facebook, and I had to go get her. But she's something else, man. I've woken up from naps and she's been gone, and the only thing open was a window. She jumped out the window. The very first time she got loose, she tore up the that little accordion thing beside of a window air conditioning.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
She tore that out, then shoved the air conditioner all the way to one side of the window, and then jumped out the little hole in the side. Yeah, and she's a 61-pound, almost the size. I mean, she's not a lot of weight, but they're like the tallest dog breed. So she's she's big. She's not a lot of weight, but she's big, and jumped out that little tiny hole. It's crazy. She's
determination.
Yeah, she's a nut.
Real fast, Tom, I'm going to say hi to some people here. Let's
Sure.
see who we got in the chat. Commentator Auditor, how you doing? Ironton Auditor, how you doing? Lisa, Smitty, what's up? Let's see. We're getting a few coming in now. Can somebody put in the chat, was there another live or something? Because I didn't really pay attention. Bits and pieces, what's up, man? I wasn't sure if anybody else was going live or anything. That's why I kind of done this. Well, Tom and I talked about this, and we were considering doing this at this hour as opposed to a little bit later, just because I was trying to kind of avoid some of the bigger channels live streams and stuff. But I'm sure we'll get our chat up there a little bit here in a minute anyway. So But anyway, we'll go ahead and kind of talk a little bit, Tom. So you, out of my experience, like I said, you and I have known each other for several years now. And you actually had hired me a few years back to do some teaching for you in defensive tactics. Correct. For a company that you used to run. So well, I shouldn't say always, but you've been affiliated with the Firearms self-defense / 2A community for a while, correct?
About 12, 13 years, something like that.
Okay. How did you get into that? Have you always been a gun guy, or?
No, see, that's kind of the cool part of the story, I guess, is I come about it in a way that most don't. I'm not a gun guy. I actually don't say this to a lot of people, and I know you know this, but I'm not.
You're about to tell a bunch of them now, Tom. So
yeah, I know. I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. I'm not a gun guy. I don't collect guns. I don't have a lot of guns. I don't sit around and read gun magazines. When I have time off, I don't say, "Ooh, let's go to the range," and all the kind of normal things that gun guys do. I don't do. I grew up around guns. Grew up here, in Southern Ohio. Hunted with my dad when I was a kid. Later on, joined the Army, and still got out of the Army. Never owned a gun. Wasn't really trying to own a gun. Didn't really think, it just didn't cross my mind. It just wasn't something I was concerned with. And I ended up, after I got out of the Army, I was in the Army for 13 years. And when I got out, ended up, long story short, leaving the personal stuff out, but ended up at Ohio State University, the Ohio State University. By the way, did you hear that they got the trademarked?
I thought that was already something that was done like a year ago or something.
No, well, they just announced it recently. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But they actually, I'm sorry, trademark, copyrighted.
I think it's trade. Exactly, I think it's trademark when it's actually something that's.
It's when it's all capitals, and when it's, I guess it's when it's referring to colleges or collegiate sports. They can't obviously copyright the word "the." Sure. But anyways, I got my degree in history from Ohio State, and I got enough credits there in just constitutional history to be a major if they allowed it to be a major, but they don't. So that's what sometimes I say where I majored in constitutional history, and I had some guy recently call. I said that just for shorthand purposes, and some guy called me out and he says they don't have a major in that, and I'm like, well, you're right. Okay, here's the way it works, right? So I took every class they offered on constitutional history, and over half of my credits were history in general. So that's what I focused on, in Roman history and ancient Mediterranean warfare, et cetera, et cetera. So when I got out of there, well, first off, while I was there, because I know some people suspect that I may have gotten, nudged to the left a little bit in college, but I didn't. As a matter of fact, I was always the token conservative in all my classes, where the instructor would explain a constitutional theory or way of thinking about something in the Constitution, and then they would say, or conservatives say, and point at me. And then I would teach the other opposite part of the class, basically. So that was always true in environmental classes too. When I had to take earth sciences and stuff.
Oh, I can imagine.
Professor would talk about the 2 or 3 different prevailing theories, and then he'd say, or conservatives would say, and they'd point at me, and then I'd say, well, this and that and the other. So no, I didn't get liberalized at all. But I got out of. So we're getting back. I'm eventually taking you where you asked, but. So I get out of Ohio State, having learned way more about the Constitution and the founding generation and the colonial period than I ever had before, obviously. And it occurred to me that, I had a buddy in a church I was going to that was a concealed carry instructor, NRA instructor. And he got me to go to his concealed carry class. And then after the concealed carry class, there was some Sunday that somebody was gone and I had to fill in as a Sunday school teacher or something. I don't remember what happened, but he comes up to me afterwards and he says, "Hey man, you'd be a really good teacher." And I was like, "Really?" I didn't. He's like, "Yeah, you need to get your NRA certification." And at this point, I don't even own a gun at this point, right? And I'm like, "Really?" And so it was right around the time I get my concealed carry permit, I save up, I get a gun. What he's telling me is, we talk about it a few more times. Eventually, I get my NRA certification. Me and him teach together up in Columbus a little bit. And here's the actual answer to your question. it hit me the more I got into it and the more I understood concealed carry laws, the concepts of concealed carry, why we conceal carry, etc. I understood that, and this became my mission statement, and it still is today. The more educated, armed, law-abiding citizens they are, the freer and the safer I am. So I originally began teaching concealed carry just for free. We would just do it sort of as a hobby when I was up in Columbus. And then my dad got Alzheimer's, and he and mom asked me to come down here, to move down here and help them out, because my brother was persona non grata in the family at the time, and is again, but there was a middle period. But anyways, so I came down, me and my son moved back down to my hometown to help them out. And at that point, I was trying not to get a 9-to-5 punch the clock job, because I knew, parents calling me every 45 minutes on the phone asking me how to help them change the channel or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I knew that I'd end up getting fired from a regular job, so I wanted something that gave me flexibility. So I hooked up with a local gun shop and became their chief instructor. That was JD Armory down South Point, and started teaching a lot down there, and got a lot better at it. And a lot of people kept telling me, "Man, you're good. Man, you're good. Man, you're good." And I'm not an arrogant, crap talking kind of guy. So it took a while and several different people to convince me that I was good at teaching. And it's really the teaching that's brought me into the gun world. It's not the guns. It's like I tell people, it's what we do with them. It's what they represent in our lives, in the history of America, and what they mean in terms of freedom and personal safety, as well as what they could mean to the rest of the world. You got other parts of the world catching on to this idea now too. And so once again, the more educated, law-abiding, armed citizens there are, the freer I am.
Well,
so
let me ask you, let's back up just a minute. You served in the military.
Correct.
Okay. What branch of service were you in?
I was in the Army.
In the Army. And how many years were you in?
I was in 4. I'm sorry. I was in 3, got out for 4, was back in for another almost 10. So I rounded up to 13, but it was like 12 years, 10 months or something like that.
Well, first of all, thank you for your service.
Thanks, sir. It was my honor.
And secondly, tell me a little bit, if you don't mind, tell me a little bit about what you've done in the Army.
Well, my first tour, my first enlistment, first off, I was a Cold Warrior. So I got out, just to let everyone know right off the bat, I got out right before, literally like 8 weeks before 9/11. So I was a Cold Warrior, and went in the 80s as a chaplain's assistant. I was so naive and didn't know anything. And I guess it was on the recruiter's list of what they said he had to have or something. So they talked me into it, and I was just young and dumb and stupid. And so I was a chaplain assistant the first time in, and that was actually pretty cool. It just sounds really not cool. You're basically a personal bodyguard for a chaplain. So it was kind of cool. Yeah. And because I was the distinguished honor grad at my AIT, which, trust me, was not difficult, I was handpicked by the 18th Airborne Corps full-bird colonel, the chaplain of the entire corps, and I was his personal assistant. And so I got exposed to a lot as a young soldier that I wouldn't have otherwise. Very high-level meetings and the structure of the Army and the way things work more. Then I got out and was out for 4 years, lived up in Chicago, et cetera, moved back, decided to go back in. I'm trying to figure out which personal details to leave out. Decided to go back in, tried going back in. At the time, it was during the Bush drawdown. If people, the older people at least remember that. They were drawing down the military. So I was prior service, and I was trying to get back in. And so they made it a very upstream battle. And at the time, they were only accepting linguists, special forces, and helicopter pilots. So I put in my flight packet, and I got qualified, not selected. Then I put it in again and got qualified, not selected. And so at that time, I said, "Hey, dude, I'm just trying to get back in, And he says, "Well, now the only thing they're allowing are special forces." So I signed up for Special Forces Assessment and Selection. Spent 6 or 8 months, I don't remember, doing what you're doing now, just working out as a living almost. And I know you got a regular job, though. I didn't. I did it. I'd never been to the gym before. I'd never lifted a weight before. I'd been in the Army before, but I'd never done any of that stuff. Went over here to Planet Fitness in Raceland. It was one of the only gyms at the time. And I told the guy over there, I gave him the paperwork I had, and I said, "Hey, man, I got to be able to do this when I get to Fort Bragg soon." And I said, "But I've never lifted a weight. I don't know how to do any of this." And he laughed at me and says, "Okay." And this was back before personal trainers charged everybody. This guy just did it for free. And I would show up like 6 every morning, So I was going to the gym 3 days a week. I was I was going to the gym 5 days a week. I was rucking 3 days a week, running 3 days a week, going to swim classes 3 days a week, and got to selection. And by the way, there's a documentary on, I think it's on Hulu, 2 Weeks in Hell on it, and finished it, completed 100% of it, and got qualified, not selected. So
for SF, you mean?
For SF, yeah.
Okay.
So basically, it was kind of like getting cut on the last day of basketball tryouts or something like that. That's what people would understand. So we started off with, I want to say 480 guys, only 20 something finished, and 17 of us got non-select. So I'm still proud of it. And
sure.
But anyways, so then I transferred over to the legal field and became a legal NCO that specialized in working for Spec Ops. So I did international and operational law, in-country briefings, all kinds of different things that are particular to SF. Plus, I did the normal JAG guy stuff of taking their money and rank and kicking them out and all that kind of stuff.
Is that what they call the normal stuff? Like,
well,
hey,
that's
got something for you.
That's what JAG guys do, is they mete out the punishment the commander wants given in non-judicial punishment, courts martials, or administrative discharges, kicking you out. So
now, were you involved in any actual was it tribunal hearings and stuff while you were in?
Not, like I said, this was all pre 9/11, so there was really none of that to be involved in. I did what some people would probably call that, but not technically tribunals. Administrative discharge boards are kind of like, sort of like that. You're pretty much set up to lose, because we don't even engage in doing anything to you unless it's overwhelming odds we're going to get what we want. So, yeah, I mean, that's just the way.
So proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah. I mean, we've already got, and then the Army sets things up, especially some of our veterans out there may understand this have been on the other side of it. But we set things up like there's 2 different chapters, and I may get this a little wrong for those of you that may actually know, but it's like 14-12B and C. And chapter 14's one is for a pattern of misconduct, and the other is for a serious act of misconduct. So it would usually be a serious act of misconduct that would bring a guy to our attention, and we would do an admin discharge board on that. But if the board found him innocent of the serious act, we would still have because as soon as it was brought to us, we'd call their NCO and so forth and say, hey, give us every counseling statement you've ever had on this guy. So every little infraction a guy's ever done that's been on a record, you've got that as the backup, as the pattern of misconduct. So if you fail on the 12B, then you still get him on the 12C and kick him out of the Army. So it's kind of a setup.
So is that how they kind of determine if it's going to be prosecution or just like
No. That's administrative discharge.
Okay.
So that the Army, the military in general, but at least the Army I was exposed to, Special Forces, the Spec Ops community, juries have to be composed of someone of the rank of the accused or higher. And in SF, everybody's of relative high rank. We don't have a lot of privates or private first classes or specialists running around. SF guys are almost always E6 or above. So if you've got somebody that's an E8, then you'd have to take all your first sergeants, your sergeant majors, and your officers out of doing their daily jobs to try to compose a jury. And nobody wants to do that. So they avoid trials like the plague. It has to be something that was very, very public, where they have the public pressure to make sure it's done that way. They even turn things over to civilian authorities as much as they can and don't deal with it at all.
Right.
So anyways,
I
had a blast
I can
doing
see
it.
that.
Yeah. I mean, literally, you're taking guys out of their jobs to make up a jury. And it's under the command of a certain level of a star, where you had to get all the way up beyond 4 stars to get outside of the SF community. So we would have to be pulling special operators of one form or another out of doing what they do just to make up a jury. So we didn't do trials very often. So we would opt out for administrative discharge. In other words, just kick them back out of the civilian community, you piece of dirt kind of attitude.
Okay.
Yeah. On the acts of misconduct stuff, that was the attitude. I don't mean if you got out for weight or things like that. Those didn't have admin discharge hearings, not because they're like mini trials. And I've got some amazingly cool, funny stories on those, but not for tonight.
Okay. So after you get out of the service and you decide to get a degree,
Yep.
And you want to pursue a history degree.
My plan at the time was to go into law, and I ended up doing a year of law school. So I had to go see a counselor about my record, because I had an associate's degree from University of Maryland. I had a history degree from a general studies degree from University of Maryland, associates, and I just took that up to Ohio State, and I'd seen a counselor up there. And it's funny because I could go through an hour's show on me listening to the advice of experts that steered me wrong into gigantic potholes in my life. And one of the things this guy told me is, he says, "Hey man, you're of advanced age for a college student. You're a single dad. Let's just hurry up and get your 4-year degree and get you out of here, because you're planning on going to law school anyways, right?" And I said, "Right," because I wanted to do law school and a teaching degree. He talked me out of the teaching degree.
Hey, Tom, you want to take that question right there?
Admin discharges can be honorable. Hold on here. Let me think. I got to switch the file cabinets in my brain. Honorable, there's 5 of them actually. Honorable, general, other than honorable, bad conduct, or dishonorable. Those are the 5 discharges. The last 2, bad conduct and dishonorable, can only be given by a courts martial. The first 3, honorable, general, and other than honorable, or what we call OTH, could be given, could be given by admin discharge boards. But not bad conduct had to be given by a special courts martial level, and dishonorable had to be a general courts martial. And I'm almost positive dishonorable 100% always ends up in prison time. I don't believe you can get a dishonorable and then just go home. That's Hollywood. I'm pretty sure dishonorable comes with time at Leavenworth as part of the package.
Oh, wow. Real fast, I'm going to say hi to some of the people who come in late. Top Welder, what's up? Let's see. Stars, how are you? Jamie, how are you? See what else we got here. Dave, what's going on, man? Let's see here. So anyway, so you decide that you're going to pursue possibly pursue law school, but you go in, you start doing, I guess, kind of seeking out the possible paths for that. And it led you to more of a history study, and then more specifically constitutional history.
Right. Yeah. I signed up as a history major, and then looking at the catalog, I saw, oh, constitutional history. And I took that, constitutional history 1, 2, and then my senior, I forget what they call it. It's not a thesis. It's like a survey class or something where you do a little bit of independent type study as well, guided. I don't remember, to be honest. But then I think I have 4 classes of constitutional history alone. And to be honest, I'd already done self-study a ton before I ever got to college, and done way more since then. So it's not
self-study on constitutional expertise.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I know a guy.
Have I triggered you?
I know a guy, folks. Somebody in the chat put the name of a possible constitutional expert scholar, please, because we're going to try to see if we can figure out if anybody knows who the great one is. By the way, Uncle Artie, hey, how are you? Art, what's going on, man? But yeah, I you opened the door right there, Tom. You did.
Sorry,
Come
man.
on, man. All right, so let's keep going. So
yep.
So you decide then you start studying constitutional law. Let me ask you this. Were you surprised when you started down the rabbit hole?
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I was on guard because I was late 30s, I think, when I got to Ohio State. So I was on guard for liberal, indoctrination hitting me when I got there. So the very first thing, my first constitutional history professor said, I remember he wrote it on the board, and I was immediately like defensive, like, no way, man, no way. And it ends up, it's very true. And he said, we've had 3 constitutions. What? And then he started his very first lecture with, we had the Articles of Confederation. And
Sure.
I'm like, oh, okay, true. He got me there. Then we've had the United
Was that
States
really considered? Was that really considered a constitution though?
It's the same thing. It constituted a government.
Okay, because I was thinking it was more like a recommendation of the way things possibly should.
Well, that was the problem with it. Is that's kind of the way it worked.
Right.
It didn't have any teeth.
Okay.
And so that was the reason it didn't work.
Okay.
But yeah,
I
it
mean,
it was an agreement. It was an agreement among the colonies of how they would run a government, and just wasn't any good. And then we have what we know as our Constitution, and then constitutional scholars, and now myself, consider the Constitution since 1877 to be basically not a whole new thing, but significantly kind of like a Constitution 2.0. So we got the Articles of Confederation, Constitution 1.0, and 1877 brought about Constitution 2.0.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Did your passion for constitutional knowledge, did that fuel you to be the pro 2A guy? What led you in the direction of the 2A thing? Because you already said that you were never really a gun guy. You were never really that guy. So
right.
I'm just curious how your education transformed you into pushing 2A to the level that we're at today.
Well, in order to understand the Constitution, you have to understand what they were trying to prevent. So it's kind of like they were trying to give advice on how to hold a rabid wolf by its ears and still live. Okay. So they knew government at best was a necessary evil. I forget which founder even said that, something to that effect. So you got to understand what they're fighting against, or what they're trying to prevent. What they know is normal human behavior and a normal progression of governments. And when you understand that, then you understand a lot of the pieces and minutia of the Constitution. So as I studied more and more history, not just ours, but Greek, Roman, and British specifically, along with ours, and how those intersected with ours, as well as being, a Christian, having had a childhood and early adulthood fairly steeped in Christianity and the Bible. You kind of just get the more history you study, you just begin to see these. It's funny because we look back at the founders, we say it all of our lives. We're like, how did they see ahead, man? How did they know all this? Well, one, Bible, Greek, Roman, British, those, and you can easily see the patterns of human behavior. And they just, things begin to appear to you, and you're like, oh yeah, that's like this, or that's like this, or I've seen this before. So as I would study and all of this info just kind of began to build in my head, you begin to see, or I began to see, the importance of 2A. Because like I said, I wasn't focused on 2A when I started. It wasn't like I didn't care about it. I mean, I was a full supporter, but it wasn't the emphasis of my learning the Constitution and the pieces that I would study. And eventually, I realized what a lot of people say now, but I think I understood it at probably in a different way than your average guy, how the Second Amendment, at least from their eyes, was designed to be, the defense standing right behind freedom of speech.
Sure.
So you've got.
I actually say that all the time. The reason that we have a First Amendment is because we have a Second. I mean, ultimately, that's kind of what it boils down to.
Right. I think, yeah. They knew freedom of speech without a way to defend it would be gone fairly quick.
Sure.
And vice versa. Guns without the ability to say why you're using the gun would be sort of meaningless as well.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, the two.
And we have a lot of conflict too within the I hate to say pro 2A community, but gun fans at least, mm-hmm. that even a lot of people that are pro gun don't understand at what point that the Second Amendment isn't about going out shooting squirrels with grandpa.
No, it's not. And I remember the first time I heard that Bill Clinton gave a State of the Union speech sometime in the 90s. I don't remember which one. Gave a State of the Union speech where he was supporting, hunting and collecting, basically your NRA leather elbow patch types. He was on their side, the good old country boy, high end Democrat of the 90s. And then the very next day, there was a representative from, I believe, Georgia or California. can't remember, but he stood up on the floor of the House and said, the Second Amendment's not about shooting Huey, Dewey, and Louie. It's about killing politicians. And they immediately banned him from the floor. He was kicked out for like a week. But he's right. I mean, that is what it's about, that we hope we never have to use, but that's why it exists.
You have to look at the comment on the page.
Yeah.
You remember what
right.
I actually,
yeah, I remember you tell. Yeah,
okay.
I remember you telling me that.
So to Lisa, who brought that up, that was like the only time I've ever actually got fired up on any kind of live stream.
So I think we like you, me, and all your friends, and our friends of friends, the kind of thing. We need to get an army of drones with tranquilizers to send to Washington.
Oh my. Okay, so
tranquilizers.
That's all you need. Yeah, that's all you need. Yeah.
Hey, if we could get them to sleep for a day, that's what. Every time they're like the government's going to shut down or whatever, I'm like, yay. Yeah,
no kidding. Please take a nap. Go lay down somewhere.
Take a nap, right? Exactly.
So
they're like there's log jams in Congress. They can't get anything done, and I'm like, thank God.
So let's move on with this. I want to go a direction with this. I want
sure.
to open a few doors if we can. Okay, so you being now, you've become a pro 2A guy. You've realized the importance of.
Well, I was always pro 2A. Now I'm.
Well, I should say you realize the gravity of the.
You could say now I'm an activist or something along those lines, right?
Okay. So at this point now, at what point do you transition into being? Well, I know you said somebody mentioned about being a teacher, but at what point did you transition into being an activist or just this pro 2A guy, constitutionalist guy, to actually say, you know what, I want to teach people this?
Well, they kind of happened all parallel, simultaneously, because of who I already was, adding the education I was getting at Ohio State onto it, or got at Ohio State.
Yes.
Yeah, close. So that was going on. So I had this foundation, former Army, raised around here, hunting as a kid. So I had all the foundation. And then after I got out of Ohio State, like I said, that buddy at church was talking me into teaching. And I became an NRA instructor. And then I sort of realized how my teaching could support the same thing I believed about the 2A. And that is, the more law-abiding, educated, armed citizens there are, the freer I am and you are. So that was the idea, was to just create more of us. Because the more of it, because I noticed most people aren't going to vote based on the 2A if they don't even own a gun.
Sure.
Once you have something, you don't want anyone taking it away. People are more likely to wake up
in more ways than one when it comes to firearm, folks.
Right. Yes. So people are going to wake up and vote accordingly if someone's going to try to take it away from them, compared to if they say, oh, yeah, I support Second Amendment. I like guns, but they don't own any or use any or anything. So I wanted to create more gun owners, educated, law-abiding gun owners. And that was sort of how those two different things in my life met.
Okay. So I know that, like I said, you and I actually taught some together in the past. And since you and I kind of went our own different ventures, and I started teaching in different places, you started teaching in different places, and so on and so forth. Since then, you have become affiliated with two organizations that I'm uneducated on. One being the Buckeye Firearms Foundation, and the other one being Faster Saves Lives. If you would first just talk about Buckeye first, so we can kind of move into Faster.
Sure. Buckeye Firearms Association is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. You got it right. You're good. Trust me, I'll get there. Buckeye Firearms Association is the political wing. I originally was the same guy that talked me into teaching that I went to church with was in Buckeye Firearms Association, and he would have me volunteer at their events. If anyone knows who Colonel Grossman is, I've run,
I do.
Yeah, I've run the book table for him. I think like 5 times. So that was the first things I started volunteering on. And these people would come by and go, hey, other Buckeye people. And they'd go, hey, who are you? And I'd tell them, and they'd go, are you a Minuteman? And I'm like, no. And they go, well, you ought to be. So this happened for a couple years. This went on when I would volunteer at different events. And one day, one of them comes up and says, hey, who are you? And I tell them, and they say, are you a Minuteman? I'm like, no. And they go, oh, you should be. And I said, well, then make me one. And then they went, oh, it's invitation only. So I've told that story within Buckeye Firearms a while now. So I assumed when I was working with them like that they were this giant organization, kind of like an NRA, but just in Ohio, right? And they do work that purpose. But when I finally got invited in, because it's by invitation only, when they finally said, okay, would you like to be as part of the organization? I was invited in, accepted that. And then I found out at the time there was only 29. There was only 29 of them. Yes. And it's a very tight-knit, close organization. So Buckeye Firearms is the political wing. That's the political action committee, or they're allowed to do lobbying. They also have a branch called Buckeye Firearms Foundation, which is educational nonprofit wing.
Okay.
So I don't work with BFA anymore. I won't go any further into that. Just let that lie. But I do work with BFF, and BFF owns Faster Saves Lives program.
Okay.
So BFF existed before Faster Saves Lives. So BFF, we have a grant program. So if you had like you did the turkey shooting hunting with the kids, you could apply to Buckeye Firearms for a grant, and we would grant you money to help with your program. You could have a youth shoot at a certain range around the country or Ohio and say, hey, we've got 500 kids coming from different Boy Scout troops, and we need an extra $1,000 to help the program or whatever. And we would do those things as well as hold our own fundraisers and things like that. Then Sandy Hook happened, what I call the Newtown Massacre. And, that was, for those that may not know right off the top of their head, I believe it was 26 children killed, kindergartners and first graders, in Newtown, Connecticut. And there was this, obviously an outcry around the country about how can we prevent this?
Sure. And
Jim Irvine, the president at the time of Buckeye Firearms Association and Buckeye Firearms Foundation, was contacted by Jeff Staggs, a superintendent here in Ohio of a school district. And he had been getting calls from his parents in his school district saying, what are you going to do about this? How are you going to prevent this happening at our school? And they called it. Jeff's like, hey, let me call Buckeye Firearms and see, just let me see what they may have. So he called Jim Irvine. Jim Irvine, in his personal life, had been a customer of Tactical Defense Institute and knew John Benner, that owns that very well over in Adams County. He'd been a customer for a while. And so he called John Benner. Well, John Benner had been the National Association of School Resource Officers national trainer for a few years. So while he was in the NASRO, that's what National Association of School Resource Officers organization is called, while he was the NASRO chief trainer, he had all by himself, all by his own initiative, all by himself, come up with a program, a curriculum to train school resource officers nationally. So when Jim Irvine called him up and said, hey, John, do you have anything for this situation? The story as they tell it, I'm sure with some humorous embellishments, but when they tell it, John Benner is like, well, yes, I do. And he pulled this 3-ring binder off a shelf where he'd already had all the curriculum. He had it down as a 5-day course for police officers who were school resource officers. And they sat down together, him and a guy named Dick Castor, Jim Irvine, and John Benner, and maybe a couple other people, I'm not sure, got together. I was reading the message there. They got together and cut it down to a 3-day course because they decided they were going to make it for any staff members of schools in Ohio that wanted to choose to be armed. So at the time, there was a law in the state of Ohio that said any school district that chooses so, according to their school board, the school board could choose to add guns as part of the school safety plan. Now, that law is no longer in effect. That's a later chapter. But Newtown happened in December 2012. By March 2013, we held our first class. And I was not involved on the range part of it its first year. Its second year, I got involved on the range. But we hired now. So Buckeye Firearms Foundation and the Faster Saves Lives organization, we raise the money. We get the money. We're the structure. We're the administration. We're the advertising. We're the organizers. We do all that. But I don't teach Faster. I teach Foundations, which is the prerequisite class to get to faster. So we hire world-class trainers, John Benner and his crew out of Tactical Defense Institute in Adams County. And we asked him after that first year, we said, hey, or during the first year, we said, hey, we're going to need a class up in the northern half of Ohio for schools that don't want to travel this far. So who do you recommend? And he recommended Chris Serino of Serino Training Group. Those of you that have watched Top Shot back when that was on the History Channel know that Chris Serino came in second on the first season and then the fifth season.
Right.
And so John Benner said Chris Serino had also been in charge of OPATA, the state level director of training for OPATA, not too long before this too.
Which is the Ohio Peace Officers Training Academy, for those of you who don't know.
Correct. Yep. As a matter of fact, Chad, the silhouette when you go to qualify the silhouette, the silhouette is Chris Serino. He literally laid down on the ground and had someone chase him out. Yeah, that's Chris. So,
Okay.
Yep. So, hired him, and I got involved mostly working up there, but at TDI as well. And then over the years, I became the staff guy that went to both locations. And they said, Tom, we want you to note any differences between the two because we want to make them melt together as seamlessly as possible. So there's no contradictions between what Chris is training, what John Benner's training. And there really wasn't. It was all very minor. So I was in charge of that. So I went to tons. I've probably been to, I don't know, close to 40, somewhere between 40 and 50 faster courses over the years. And then eventually became a foundations instructor. And I mean, all this is happening simultaneously, you know. And then I eventually went to Chris Serino's instructor's course. I think he calls it Pistol Diagnostics, Mitigation, and Remediation. Yeah, it's not an easy title. But that's where he teaches you. So he was at Federal Air Marshal, too, for several years. And then he became the Federal Air Marshal Firearms trainer. Then he became the guy that if you failed your qual as a Federal Air Marshal, if you failed that one, you then went back to requal. And if you failed that, you then went to Chris. And he ran you through 1,000. He ran you through 1,000 rounds a day for 5 days.
So he taught you to not fail it again, is basically what you're saying.
No, I was never an air marshal.
No, not you. I'm saying that was his job, is to take guys.
Yeah. So
guys that fail it and make sure they don't fail it again.
So he would have 5 days, 1,000 rounds a day to fix you, 5,000 rounds, and then you would go back and qual. And if you couldn't qual after that, you were kicked out of the air marshals.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
So he's if you know Chris personally, you would know how he's all about the minutia. So that part of his personality allowed him, I believe, to analyze shooting and its problems and how to fix them in ways nobody'd ever done before. So he's an amazing instructor. Some changes have happened in his life. He's now working down in Louisiana with the Gun Talk guys.
Hey, real fast, Tom, hang on just a second. Hey, I just seen where Smitty's, I guess, logging off. Smitty, have a good one, buddy. All right, go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry.
So Chris is now down working with the Gun Talk guys in Louisiana. As a matter of fact, at 6 a.m, I'm hitting the road to go to Louisiana. I'm going to be in one of the episodes of First Person Defender. He runs that show, and that's where they run you through a scenario, find something you've done wrong, take you out to the range and train you on it, and then take you back and do another similar scenario to see if you've corrected your issue. So sometime Thursday afternoon, I'm going to be on a Gun Talk podcast, and then sometime on Thursday or Friday, he'll be humiliating me in a TV show. So,
okay, I want to ask the chat real fast. I want you guys to ask. I want you to put. We all know that we're dealing with something very tragic. We know that these violent encounters that we're dealing with across the country, whether it be in a school or any other public event or whatever that's going on, these wackos go out and try to hurt people. I want you to put a 1 if you think this is really a gun issue, or a 2 if you think this is a person issue. I want to see what my chat thinks. We got close to 30, it looks like, in here. I want to see what they think. 1 if you think it's gun, 2 if you think it's a person issue. And real fast, I want to ask you, Tom, since we're kind of opened up that can of worms, why is it not a gun issue? Why is this not a gun issue? Why is all these issues that we're
because
dealing with?
when you take first off, they exist.
Okay.
So we can't. Okay, where was it? Copenhagen. Was it 2 days ago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 days ago there was a mall shooting in a country with some of the strictest gun laws on the planet. So England, you are fairly successful in getting rid of all the guns, and now they're collecting your kitchen knives. No joke. Because now they have an insane amount of bladed attacks. Violence is a human issue. That's why it's not a gun issue. Cain killed Abel with a rock.
So what you're saying is a firearm is not violent. A firearm is an inanimate object.
It's a tool.
People are violent.
The FBI statistics tell us year after year after year that more people are killed with clubs, ball bats, hammers, and legs and hands than by firearms.
Okay, so let me ask you this, and I promise we're getting into it faster. Let me ask you this: when you hear the term common sense gun laws, and the Democrats threw that around for a while, specifically when they were talking about what's just common sense. We need common sense gun laws. Would it be safe to say from you've obviously bought firearms new. Would it be safe to say that we already have pretty decent common sense gun laws in place when it comes to purchasing a firearm?
First off, the phrase is a political phrase. It's not.
I'm kind of playing off that a little bit.
Yeah, I know. I just want to make sure no one misunderstands what I'm about to say. The phrase is a political phrase meant to garner bipartisan support, to get both. Basically, in Washington, bipartisanship means the right, or Republicans, because the Republicans aren't always right, so I'll say the right. Bipartisanship means Republicans cave and give the left what they want. That's what bipartisanship means. I've never seen it work the other way around. If the left has to cave and compromise to give the right what it wants, then it's called bullying or we were held hostage or something like that. It's not. So common sense gun laws is a phrase they use to try to take your average person that doesn't know any better to go, well, yeah, we want common sense gun laws. Of course we do. So then the politician gets support, which bullies the right into giving in. I think we're way past common sense. First off, most people don't know a lot of these laws aren't enforced. If we enforce it, and this is something that Buckeye Firearms Association has to say a lot in the political sphere, is we already have more gun laws than we need. If they would, first off, here's a problem that I've heard it mentioned a couple times lately that a lot of people don't know. In order for the NICS background check system to efficiently say, no, this person can't have a gun, it has to have information put in it, right? If there's no background check information put in it, then it's not going to give an accurate result on should this person be legally allowed to have a gun. A lot of small towns all across America, this is not an Ohio problem, this is an American problem. Small towns across the country, and rural counties especially, don't have the money or the manpower, and sometimes the willpower, to take all of the court records that are necessary and enter them into the NICS background check system. So what happens is you've got people that have backgrounds that should disallow them from purchasing guns that can still go get them. And they know that. They know that because they walked into a gun shop and decided to give it a try, and it worked. So they're like, damn, they don't have that on the record. Cool. So now I can go back and I can buy another gun. Listen, I personally know someone this applies to. They have a domestic violence conviction, which bans you from guns for life. I'm not going to argue whether that should or shouldn't be at this point, but bans you from guns for life due to the Lautenberg Amendment from the 90s. But the local municipality that has that record has never submitted it into the NICS system. And I know this person has a fairly large stockpile of guns and an anger issue, and I believe at one point in their life probably had a willingness to use them, which means they may have a willingness in the future. The background check system only works as good as the information we put in it. 2, it is illegal once you know you have that conviction to even attempt to buy a gun. When you do the 4473, when you go into the gun shop, it asks you, do you have any domestic violence convictions? If you say yes on any of those questions, the sale's over. There's no sale. They don't even do the background check. You already checked yourself by saying yes. most of you know on the 4473, if you buy guns, the very first answer is no. And I mean, is yes. And all the
Easy,
others
Tom.
are no. Had that backwards. The first answer is yes. Are you buying this gun for yourself? If you're doing it legally, I'm saying. The first one will be yes, and all the others will be no if you are legal. If you lie on those, it's already a felony. Sure. Do you know how few of those are ever prosecuted?
Oh, I can't imagine. I've never even heard of one.
We're talking like the Obama administration, I think, only prosecuted like 40 some in 8 years.
Wow.
And there's thousands and thousands that could be in jail or at least prevented from buying guns, or would give us probable cause for maybe some other issues to stop them from whatever. I'm just saying, if we don't enforce the laws we've got. So I've been against any new gun laws, any, none. That's it. Until we are rolling back the bad ones, I'm not going to give in to any. I don't care what they are. I'm the same way with taxes. None. Absolutely none. Local, state, federal, none. Until you show me cuts you've made.
What about Terry versus Ohio?
I'm
sorry. I went in.
I'm not as intimate with that as I should be. I actually meant to study up on that, not for this podcast, but just in general. But I haven't. And Chad, there are some people out there that will talk about things they don't know. I'm not one of them. Yeah.
Wait a minute.
I'm not going to go into Terry.
Are you talking about somebody that we know? Some little short feller?
I'm just sure they're out there. You know what I'm saying? There's somebody out. No. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. If guns are not the issue, and the reality is, if we were to all agree, and this is the way that I look at it, and this is just from my perspective. If we were to all agree right now and say, okay, take the guns, would there be any way logically that we could guarantee that there are no more firearms on Earth?
Well, I mean, if we want to play the what if game, if there was a way, well, no, unless
that's my point. That's my point. You would
also have to wipe the knowledge from the world's information.
Exactly.
On how to
manufacture. Right. Exactly. Okay. Right. So if we've eliminated the fact that then, and you know that I agree with you, but from your perspective, guns are not the problem. Firearms are not the problem. It's a part of our founding, it's our principles, our founding principles and stuff. It's your absolute God-given right and your Second Amendment right to have them. Okay. So we've seen a giant increase in mass shootings and all forms of different venues or places. But let's just stay with the United States and just say, so why? What do you think's happened? Why do you think
change in society? Some of the changes in society that have happened obviously have been good, but there's a lot that hasn't. Do you think it's a more of a cultural thing, or do you think it's okay? Well, let me explain it with Roman history.
Sure.
We've lost virtue.
I was hoping you would lean towards the virtue thing.
You can have virtue and be a Buddhist. You can have virtue and be a Muslim. You can have virtue and be a Christian. You can have virtue and be an atheist. And I bring that up specifically in like I said, I was going to come at it from sort of a Roman method first, because I know everybody listening isn't a Christian.
Sure.
But everybody listening has been culturally immersed in what remains of a Christian culture, even if they aren't Christian. Well, that's the purpose of the 2A, but yes. So virtue is the key, and that's the same thing Romans said about their problem. The Romans were very religious. Religion not meaning spiritual. So religion meant that they would pick their favorite gods, whatever. They would go do the celebrations. They would pick the certain things that the priests of that god or goddess had told them were important things to practice in life. And that created a framework, a weaving of culture together in Rome of all these different, one person would focus on the goddess of love, and another would be, he's a farmer, so he's on the god of farming. But they would all require being a fairly decent person, doing some good things, maybe for the wrong motivations, but you're still doing good things. And, all these millions of decisions in an entire culture of people created, a lack of waste. And when I say waste, I mean waste of humanity, waste of life, waste of resources. It created a lack of that. And we're to the point now in America where we're past the virtue stage too. Now there's very specifically everything the left pushes, and a lot on the right as well, is all about life with no consequences. And that's what, not to get on a crazy tangent, but that's what the abortion debate's all about. It's about life with no consequences. The promiscuity of our culture, the licentiousness, all of that is about, we want to do what we want to do without the consequences of those actions. And we like to find ways to get rid of those consequences. And so to turn this back to where you brought it, to me, the mass shootings are some of the consequences of us as a culture. For one, we want to do things that aren't healthy, that we've known, that humans in general have known for millennia aren't healthy, but we don't want the consequences. We want to medicate someone in with mental health issues to not being able to for us not to have to care for them. We got rid of mental institutions as they used to be in the late 60s the late 50s and the 60s. There was no homeless problem in the 50s. There was no homeless problem in the 40s. I'm not saying there weren't any, but it wasn't anything like it is now. So we've got a ton in our culture that's all about, we want what we want and we don't want the bad side of it, and we won't put up with it. And I think part of the problem is leading to the mass shootings. A lot of the mass shootings are, now I'm starting to get a political angle on a lot of them. It may be nonsensical, but the people are saying somewhat of a political angle. Used to, I would say that they are mostly, the one in Michigan definitely had a political angle. And when I say political, I don't necessarily mean Republican versus Democrat. Sometimes I mean anarchists. You got you got all kinds, and then you got, the Muslim, Christian, Muslims against the world. To me, that's still political. You've also got, the trans kids out in Washington State, or was that Colorado? That did the STEM school shooting. That was Colorado, in my set. That they were making a statement. To me, that's what I mean by political. Whereas before, I think they tended to be a lot more suicidal. Right. I've said since I was a child that this whole promoting self-esteem thing is bullshit, and I think it warps the human brain to be taught that you're nothing but special when you're young, because eventually it's not parents and grandparents that's around you every day. It's real life.
So you're saying participation trophies are probably a little bit of our lack of virtue?
I may differ a little. I think participation trophies are okay as long as that's what you're told they are.
Right. I guess that's what I'm getting at. Yeah. Because real fast, I want to ask our chat real fast. I'm not asking anybody for specifics, but I'm just curious. If you don't care, everybody in the chat, just type in the state, or obviously if you don't live in the States, type in the nation that you're from. I want to see what we have covered here. Let's kind of do a roll call of everybody's location. Just curious. I want to see states and areas that people are from to see who's represented. But go ahead, Tom, while they're doing that. So,
no, my personal opinion is that a lot of teen suicide, not just mass shooting, but I think a lot of teen suicide, or now we're into the young adult suicide, is just based on the framework of your brain is built when you're young, right? And when that framework has supported, I am awesome, I am amazing, I can achieve anything in life that I set my mind to. And then all of a sudden, middle high school, you begin to separate from parents a little bit and get into this part of society that isn't reinforcing that. And if you vocalize it, I'm special, I'm amazing, then you're going to get your ass kicked, right? Either literally
somebody else we know,
either literally or by life will kick your ass. And then
he's getting them both.
Then it doesn't compute, because what your brain is telling you should be true isn't the truth you're experiencing.
Sure.
And I think that's what leads to a lot of teen and young adult these days. And when I say young adult, I'm talking like, good grief, actually probably my age, probably 40s down, have been raised in the post-Oprah world of self-esteem and everybody's special and unicorn fairy dust and farts, right? That's where I first heard it, and that's where a lot of Americans.
If you would have told me before this stream that Oprah would be brought up, or that unicorns and rainbows and farts or whatever it was,
you just said no thanks, Tom.
I'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about, Tom. Okay, so let me ask you this.
So what I'm saying is, in the end, the bigger question is, it's a people issue.
It's a people problem.
It's a people issue. Yeah, there's less virtue, and I'm not trying to say everyone's got to be a Christian. I believe, I believe you could be an atheist and study the book of Proverbs, and it would make your life better.
Well, certainly. I mean, that's kind of like and I mean, obviously, there's. I think anybody would admit that that's just basic rules of life of being a good human being in the book of Proverbs anyway. But
right. And we are currently in 2022, literally in a world where nothing is sacred. Nothing is even factual,
art.
I mean, simply saying male and female now is controversial.
Oh yeah. So now we can't say if you're a boy or a girl,
right? Then, so it's way way beyond.
They used to call that gender dysphoria, I believe, is what there was a scientific name for.
They just took it out of the, what do they call it, the DSM-5 or 4? They just took that out like a year, maybe 2 years ago.
Right. I was going to say, because I remember as a young man, like that was like considered a mental illness or something, and I don't want to get off on that tangent, but I just kind of want to speak.
Yeah.
It seems a lot like sometimes like.
No, wait a minute. Let me tie that in to what we're here for. So
wait a minute, guys. Wait a minute. Listen, I want everybody in the chat pay attention. Somehow we're going to tie in. Now, somehow you got to tie into Art's fart.
Oh, so not the fart. Not the fart.
We have to. Okay, so we're gonna figure out a way to be able to.
Okay, wait a minute. I think I can do it. So I was subbing, and most of my subbing for the last 2 years has been junior high, right? And anyone out there that deals with junior high kids knows that they're, for about 2 years of their lives, they're aliens. They're not normal humans anymore. Right, they are a really weird subspecies of humanity. And so, anyways, so some point in school, somebody said something about male or female or something. I don't know. And one of the kids said, there's more than two. They said gender and sex aren't the same.
Yeah, two different things.
That's it. Yeah, they said gender and sex aren't the same. That's what they said. Right. And I said, really? And they said, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And what they said is really not important. Well, here's what I said. I said, you do realize that until just recently, those two words are synonyms.
Yeah.
For a few centuries. I said, now somebody decided we're going to change the way the words work. And you think they're not the same anymore. I said, trust me, they're the same. And because I take every opportunity I can to let these junior high kids know, because they all think they know so much. I take every opportunity I can to let them know that whatever they think they know, we already knew. You guys think you're special and sneaky, but trust me.
That's been going on forever, bud.
Exactly.
We thought that same thing. I thought there's no way they're going to figure out what I'm doing.
Right.
And that whole time, like my mom and dad's like, dude, I know what you're doing.
So here's how I could tie it into the fart. That kid was a fart kid.
Okay, so here we are. Okay.
Now here I'm gonna tie it back into 2A. The left. One of their major weapons they use against cultural period, not right or left culture, just their way of influencing, is they change words. If you control the language, you can control people. You can control what they think, how much they think. So they change those words, which has now created a debate and an argument that didn't even exist before they changed the words. They do the same thing with guns, shooter. See right there. It's definitely a people problem definition of shooter is more people that shoot other people as a mean. No, a shooter is what I do when I go to the range. That's what a shooter is. These are killers.
Exactly.
Yes. So they use words. They use words against us. We are very picky in Buckeye and in Faster to correct congressmen. We correct it in legislation, in press conferences. We correct. It is not an active shooter. It's an active killer. Because when a cop like Chad shows up to the school to protect to protect the kids, he's going to be an active shooter while he's there. Absolutely. He's going to actively be shooting. Active shooters are not the problem. It's killers. And a lot of people don't know this, but the exact same day as the Newtown massacre, on the opposite side of the world in China, there was a guy with a steak knife in China killing kindergartners. Right. Same day, same age of kids. One with a gun in America, one with knives over in China. He didn't kill as many, but he could have. Well, it's a human problem, not a gun problem.
It's definitely, and I think that's what we focused on as society. Is it's like we keep talking. I know it's like a knee-jerk reaction. I know it is, and I know a lot of politicians play on the fact that it's the first thing that's going to draw attention to you taking action. Is if you say something about guns when there's been a crime involving guns or something of that, that magnitude of tragedy. But I think we all have to come to realize that these guns have been around for a long time. The Stoner design platform of the AR-15 has been around since 1950? Is that right?
It's the 50 something, yeah.
I think it was like 50 or something like that. But that has nothing to do with we never seen that back then. We didn't have this stuff back then. So obviously if the gun, because I'll be honest with you, my gun looks just like the day I brought him home from the hospital, bud. He aged a bit. With my AR-15s, you can't even tell he's growing up because they don't change. They're an inanimate object. They're a tool. So they're not growing a personality. I'm not failing at raising my AR, right? So tell me this. If we know that people are the problem, we know that obviously our children, that my children, your children, the people in the chat's children are possibly at risk when they go to school. The safest place to what we think or what we grew up with, right? Thinking that when you go to school, the worst problem is if you fall down and bump your knee on the playground or something, right? So, but now things have changed. So tell me how it is. What do we need to do to guarantee, or at least greatly improve our chances of our children being safe when they go to school?
Well, that's why Faster Saves Lives exists, and the name is not accidental. As you study these events, you realize that stopping the killing and stopping the dying as fast as possible saves lives. That's our sort of subtitle, is when time is all that matters. So tell me this. Okay, now I'm a captain of a police officer. I'm a police captain, right? So when you're saying faster, basically what you're saying is it's faster than calling me. It is. Okay. Because and there's several of these events that you could study down to the exact second about how long it took. And Chad, you know as well as I do, if you could show up anywhere within 3 minutes, that's amazing. That's insane. Okay, so when I'm having this debate with certain people, I will say, okay, imagine your kid or your grandkid. Someone's got a gun pointed at their head, ready to pull a trigger. Is 3 minutes cool with you?
Here's what I would challenge people to do too. I would challenge you to put 1 minute, 60 seconds on a stop clock and just wait in silence. Just wait 60 seconds, even 1 minute. How much now without a great level of skill, even just a moderate, even novice skill level, how much damage could you do with the weapon in 1 minute? Because I can tell you this, my fastest responses with my men to be somewhere is usually the fastest responses we'll see is 2 minutes to 5 minutes. So think about that.
Yeah, and when you're talking about schools out in our county, which most of America has rural areas in counties.
And I should specify too, we're in the city of Ironton. We are in a city. So it's not the same as, like you said, in a rural area, where the county sheriff has to get there. Yeah. So tell me this. So what you're saying is it's faster because we're equipping people to be on our inside men.
Well, you're what we call a first responder. Mm-hmm. And I've heard the person on the scene called an immediate responder.
I like that.
Or a self-responder. In other words, I'm in the situation, so I'm a self-responder. So I like to tell people, they go, well, Tom, wouldn't it be better if we just had more SROs? Sure, we're not against Faster Saves Lives. Buckeye is not against that. Tom, wouldn't it be better if we kept guns out of the hands of crazy people and criminals? Yeah, we're not for giving guns to crazy people or criminals. There, we agree there. Tom, wouldn't it be better if we maybe monitored kids' social media, blah, 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 to see if they're making threats? Absolutely. If there are threats, we want to follow through on them. Study the book, Why Meadow Died, written in reference to the Parkland killings. You'll read a lot about that in there. We're for monitoring social media. We're for mental health improvement. We're for better background checks, keeping guns out of the hands of criminals. We're for hardening the physical structure of the school building itself. We're for great relationships with local law enforcement and finding out a way to get response times even better. We're for school resource officers on site. We're for veterans. That was a big thing after, I believe, Parkland. Let's hire all the unemployed veterans to go. I'm not so sure that's a great idea as a blanket comment, but sure, I get the idea and I'm for it. Let's take retired volunteer parents. Sure, we're for all of it. We see it as the onion, the outer rings of an onion. But in the end, the best response you can have is somebody there at the scene. So
you're saying a lot like Die Hard when Bruce Willis was in there and he walked on the glass.
I think so.
Oh, anyway, go ahead. Sorry, my inner Cobra.
Gotcha. Yeah. So in Ohio, the old law was if a school board voted to have guns as part of its safety plan, and it asked us, we were in no way means, we had no legal authority. We were simply an organization that provided amazing training for most people, free, and for some people had to pay, but mostly free. We get grants and so forth.
And Pat, that is what we're talking about. I'm sorry.
What's that?
Pat just said armed teachers, trained teachers. That's what FASTER is. That's part of the program. That's what we're getting to.
It's FASTER is faculty, administrators, safety training, and emergency response. So we train them in guns, but it's not just teachers. Actually, probably as a subset, teachers may be our smallest group. We get school bus drivers. We get lunch ladies. We get a lot of janitors. We get a lot of. Oh yeah, we've had some lunch ladies.
There's a song about that.
There's
some, Adam Sandler.
Yeah. There's some armed lunch ladies out there, brother. We get
my lunch ladies are always mean.
So when you get school districts that are a little bit on the fence, what we tend to get early are school board members and higher level staff, because they want to come there and see that this isn't Billy Bob in his backyard teaching people how to shoot under the tree, So they show up, find out it's a good deal. Then there's a whole year lapse between when they show up and they support the program and they send staff to us. Well, then they only tend to send like their trusted buddy type staff. So it's usually a process of 3 or 4 years to get a school fully up and running. Not always, but that's a common trait we've seen, or a common trend we've seen. But we've had some schools, which I can't name, have jumped in wholeheartedly, sent teachers, bus drivers, and we have a lot of school resource officers come too. And all school resource officers and law enforcement come for free. And we have fixed a lot of law enforcement officers on their shooting, brother.
So yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. So you're telling me that you guys can take your expertise, and you've got lobbyists that go around and petition changes in state governments. You're doing that right now as we speak, so to speak, all around the country, different places, correct? So that we can't, because we know. Well, I'm saying that vaguely, but
yeah, I know,
because we know that a lot of states, you're not allowed to carry a firearm, obviously, in a school.
Right.
It's so that being said, this allows your program, your lobbyists are allowing that there be state level changes, hopefully, at least potentially.
Well, we just got passed recently, so now it's true.
Okay. So state level changes that allows for you to take your curriculum, your expertise, to go in to not only instruct people to be safe with firearms, but to teach them, God forbid, to teach them to be proficient with firearms in a defensive manner, a real fight. I used to say, and you probably heard me say this, Tom, when I was teaching, there's a difference in shooting a gun and fighting with a gun.
Well, yeah. Even in my concealed carry class, I go over the fundamentals of marksmanship. And then I say, after I go over them and everyone's nodding, the gun guys,
yeah,
they're nodding. I go, that's not why we're here.
Right.
We're here for combat shooting.
difference,
and then or defensive firearms training, and then I'll go over the fundamentals of defensive firearms or combat firearms, which is basically grip, sights, trigger, and follow through. We're not worried about. Did I fix Chad? No, I don't. No, I'm sure some of our instructors could hone up a few of his skills, like we do with each other. Everybody can always improve. Sure. But as far as I know, he's not in need of anything significant.
I've learned every time I go to the range with somebody, I can pick up something usually.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But no fixing needed. But now I'm sure Chris Sereno could.
You know what? Listen,
get
Chris Sereno on here right now, because I'm gonna take his top shot from him right now. I've already talked about this. You want some of this, bud? He wants to be Cobra Cod, like Chili and Lyle.
But we not only teach them in firearms and in combat firearms, but or handgun, but we also they get a minimum of 3 hours of tactical combat casualty care, what veterans would know as TC3 style training. Very simple at the first level, faster level 1 level, is basically chest seals, wound packing, tourniquets. The concept we teach is basically keep them alive long enough for the pros to get here. And that's why we say we're there to stop the killing and stop the dying. Once you take out the bad guy and neutralize him in whatever fashion necessary, once you take out the bad guy, then the idea is to stop the dying. We know now, or we're beginning to learn more and more about the unfortunate deaths in Uvalde, Texas. They waited an hour. There are a lot of kids in there that could have been saved if they'd have stopped, even after the guy stopped shooting. If we'd have got in there and done medical care much sooner, a lot of those kids would have survived.
I've been asked about that a lot because of my profession and my position and being, an administrator and a captain with my department. And I've been asked a lot about that particular incident. And I've really tried, because Tom, I'm somewhat of an information guy, and I try to at least have a general idea of what I'm speaking on before I make statements. However, when I very first heard this, I wanted to immediately say, "You're full of shit. There's no way. There's no way those guys done that. There's no way." But when I started finding out that those officers, those so-called officers, waited to do what they done, I want to let you know and let everybody know that's in the chat right now, I'm embarrassed for my profession for that. Truly, I don't think that there's any reason. When we went through active shooter, I'm going to go ahead and bring Terry up too, by the way, Tom. Terry, you're with us, buddy.
Hey, how y'all doing tonight? Good to see you.
Good, Terry. Good. So this is where we're at, Terry. We're we're starting to break into faster a little bit, but we're talking about gun violence, but down in Texas specifically. But so when we went through our active shooter training, and it's been a few years ago since when I very first went through it, and I remember going through the instruction, and I had already had some basic tactical training. I hadn't been to SWAT school or anything yet, but I had some tactical training a little bit. And I was blown away when the way that they taught the curriculum was this. I remember the instructor teaching this, and he goes through, and he's trying to be kind of playing the kind of dance around with his words to not be such a, full of it. And then he finally, after several times, you could just tell there were still officers in the class going, "So what do you mean with this?" And he finally gets so frustrated with this. He goes, "Let me break it down for you. If you know there's somebody in there killing our kids, you get your damn gun and you go in there and you hunt the motherfucker and you kill him. That's what you do. Right. We go in there and we kill the piece of shit that's killing our kids. That's what we do." And the truth is, as bad as that sounds to think that that's from a law enforcement standpoint, that's exactly the way we were trained to do it. If there's somebody in there killing babies, we're going to go in there and shoot him. We're going to shoot him until he's dead or until he's neutralized. And the fact that those Texas, I think was it the sheriff's office, Tom? Was that who it was? The responder?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. So the sheriff's office or whatever should be ashamed of themselves. And I'm embarrassed. And on behalf of law enforcement, I apologize. My men will not do that. The citizens of Ironton, I give you my word. If I have to go in there with a freaking pellet gun, and not like the one that shot Chili down there, because that's not right. But if I have to go in there with a damn pellet gun and chase this guy down and beat him with it, I promise I will do everything I can. I may not make it, They might kill me. I don't know, but they going to shoot me. And me and my buddy used to say this all the time. One of the guys I used to work with, he used to say, hey, he told one of the other guys, he said, hey, do you want my back panel out of my vest? And he said to put in there as extra in the front of yours. And he goes, well, no. He said, why would I want to take your back panel? He looked at me and he says, because me and Goo here ain't never going to be shot in the back because we're running towards the motherfucker. That's why. And if that's the way you got to look at it, as bad as it sounds, and until we can get that bred into these guys for whatever reason that we want to sit around and play grab ass outside, I'll never understand. But that's why it's so much more important to consider that we have allies on the inside, which is where faster comes in. To think that even if I can get there fast, don't you think it'd be nice for me to know that if I get there fast, that I got maybe an ally, that I'm not in a gunfight alone? Because I'll be honest, I don't like being in a fair fight. I don't like being in a fair gunfight. I like having an advantage if I can, right?
I promise you something, Captain. I'll make you a promise right here. There may not be anybody involved in faster in that school, but if I happen to be there and you're in, I'm following you in. I'm right there beside you all the way. And I don't even have any body armor, but it ain't about that. If there's somebody hurting kids, I'm there 100%.
And I believe that, Terry, and I appreciate that. But that's what makes what Tom does so much more vital. The fact that we have a program out there that's not only teaching these people, there's some of these guys, maybe gun guys, I don't know. I'm sure you probably run across a bunch of teachers or whoever that are probably really proficient with the fire. I don't know.
That's usually the first people that show up out of a school are usually gun people.
And that's perfectly logical.
Then we get a lot that aren't. Most aren't.
Sure. So, but then not only is he making them proficient with the firearm, but he's got lobbyists that are going to make it legal so that it's completely, it's falls under the blanket of the law. It falls under the opportunity that these people go have good training to make sure that they're equipped to do so. And I can tell you this, to think that my babies would go to a school where there were people armed in order to defend them doesn't scare me a bit, guys, because those guns aren't hurting anybody. It's the people that hurt people. The fact that I could think,
well, if you're afraid to send your kid to a school that has trained staff because you're afraid something might happen, why the hell would you ever take your kid into a Walmart?
Not only that, but think about this. If you don't think you can trust your kids in the hands of somebody that's carrying a firearm, then why in the hell are you trusting those same kids to be in the hands of those people to educate them? If they're if they're not competent enough to be able to have gun safety, you want them to teach the fundamentals of education to your children?
I know there's probably somebody out there wondering this. If not, somebody will watch it again later, wonder about it or whatever. But we've never had any incidents of any of our trainees that have left their gun laying around in a school or anything like that. We've had one or two armed educators or school staff across the country that has had some incidents. Some chick that ran a bus barn, I think in Indiana or something, left a gun laying on her desk that a kid got, but that was not a faster trained staff member. Right. So we've touched on this a couple times, but I kind of want to finish this. Ohio's law used to be, if the school board wanted to do it, that was all that was said. There was no requirements for the training. There was no curriculum. There was no stamp of approval by anybody. It's just, hey, school board, you're in local control, and we do, as a state, allow you to add guns to your safety plan if you want. So there were school districts in Ohio, plenty of them, that weren't coming to us. They were just going to local law enforcement. Or there's at least one school district I have a serious suspicion that just gave a wink and a nod to the gun guys in the school and told them to bring their guns. So there was all kinds of variations. However, last June, the Supreme Court of the state of Ohio had a case before it called Madison School District versus somebody. I forgot the other half. But there's two laws in the state of Ohio. One passed in the 90s that told schools the requirements for armed paid staff. In other words, armed security. And they had to have OPATA or an equivalency. And then there was a law passed in the early 2000s, which was saying, by the way, school boards, you can add guns to your safety program if you want. Madison School District, some parents found out that there were guns involved, didn't like the idea, so they filed a lawsuit. Buckeye Firearms paid for all the legal fees, by the way. We supported that entire case all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled that the laws were sufficiently confusing. Therefore, the latter one went out. So it then made anybody as armed staff required to have OPATA, which took our program out of the running. Anyone qualified through our program or any other version was all of a sudden not allowed to carry anymore. So nobody that cares about kids made this a big public deal because we didn't want the bad guys to hear it. But last year, Ohio school districts were all disarmed. School resource officers were the only armed security kids had all last school year in the state of Ohio. However, we've now passed a new law. We shorthand call it House Bill 99. Jim Irvine and Buckeye Firearms Foundation and his new PAC, A1S4. And remind me, I got to tell you about that in a minute. But A1S4 is something I want to tell people about. But he did the lobbying and got House Bill 99 passed. And so now we have a new system in Ohio, which we're currently standing up. We will have the school districts that choose. Once again, it's still a local choice, as it should be. But we will have armed school districts again this year in Ohio. So we've got it fixed legally, but now it's an entirely different structure. Now the idea of arming staff in schools will fall underneath the Ohio Department of Public Safety, and they are currently creating a brand new office with a new director who will oversee the approval of curriculums. I'd better not say any more on that at this stage, sure. But suffice it to say that we fully anticipate our curriculum will be approved. I personally believe it will probably be considered the gold standard for the state of Ohio, and that our curriculum is what other companies that want to do what we do. We're nonprofit. We're not a company, but there are plenty of trainers out there. You know how the firearms industry works, Chad. Plenty of trainers out there that want to say, hey, I do this, and then charge out the anus for it. So we're nonprofit, and most schools we work with get it all for free. But anyways, we've got it fixed now. And so there's a lot going to happen in the next few months, getting this new Department of Public Safety stood up, getting the curriculums approved, and getting the schools that have already been through training recertified to be armed. But we fully expect at the beginning of the school year to have armed school districts again for those that choose to be. And some will be, some have been armed in secret. I know one local to us that's been armed since the beginning. And even the staff there doesn't even know it, which I find amazing. They've kept the secret good.
Real fast, Tom. I see somebody in the chat. Lisa brought up a fact or a kind of a point. She says that there's teachers who snapped. Is there something that says with Faster that who is actually armed? How do you determine who's actually going to get the course and have the right to be able to carry it?
We leave the vetting up to the school district. That's
so people who have the most experience with these people.
You said who shows up. I'm talking about when they show up. It's because they've, one, volunteered, and two, been approved, vetted, whatever you want to call it, by the people that know them. We don't know them at that point. So we're not making those determinations when they show up. However, we have had at least a couple every summer that pass all the qualifications, and we refuse to give them certificates because they didn't take it serious enough. They wanted to debate the virtues of what they're being taught. They have different theories. They won't take it serious, because something I haven't mentioned is not only do we do shooting, we do the trauma care. We also do crisis management, which is okay, I took out the bad guy. What about all the other craziness going on? How to deal with that. And then we also do an entire day of force-on-force instruction, and that's all about the decision making. And we monitor them very closely for their attitude during it. You know, if they're shooting the bad guy and laughing, and we've had that, we take that serious. Because for most people, you know, Chad, force on force can be extremely stressful. You know it's fake. You know you're not going to die. Nobody else is dying, but still somehow the human brain really gets fooled, and the adrenaline really pumps. The stress is truly there, and you know, a good, decent person is going to take that serious. So yeah, there are several people that we have withheld our approval from. We have no legal authority to say yes you can or no you can't carry. That's not our role. That's up to the local school board, their principals that work with them, the people that see them and know them, to know if that's good for them. And I would assume, if you've got a person, well, first off, if a teacher struck kids physically, why are they still teachers at all? But and people say that. Well, Tom, what about a teacher that decides to shoot up the kids? Well, true, but what's stopping that now?
if a teacher decides to shoot children, they don't need your course to carry a firearm.
Exactly.
Criminals,
Exactly.
criminals and people with malintent will always be involved in criminality and malintent. There's no way to assume intent, and I mean that's just the way it goes, you know.
Well, and you also have to realize too that the people, like you said to begin with, the people that are going to be drawn to this are going to be already the kind of gun people to start with, at least, or some kind of interest or confidence in it. You know, I seen somebody, Smitty actually said, I don't trust the blue-haired woke teachers. Smitty, are you talking about one of your teachers? Just let it out, bud. Just let it out. What'd she do? I bet she was mean. I bet she taught English class. Who was that old friggin' hag?
I had a couple teachers that I wouldn't have trusted with a gun either. I'm quite
Oh my
sure,
God.
But, you know, I would say that at least 90% of those trying to get themselves involved in this type of a training class probably already own their own weapons, probably already have experience.
Sure. Well, and that's why I said what's stopping them now? If they're going to get crazy and want to kill kids, our training has got nothing to do with it.
Right.
I agree completely. It's not like you're going to make them better at it.
Right. Well, and that's kind of what you know. Even the question comes up. Well, you know, I don't want to trust some teachers. But let me ask you this. But we have to realize this is the same pool of people that they chose to be teachers. You know, they chose to want to educate youth or whatever. The same could be said, you know, with police officers. You know, you trust police officers to be around kids with guns. You know, and I'm not saying that that's a good idea, bad idea, whatever. I'm just simply saying, you know, there's a certain type of people that are drawn to being involved in community and or education of children.
There's a gigantic segment of our population, probably always been true, probably true in every culture through history. I don't know, but there's a huge segment of our population that's just really fucking stupid, and they're allergic to logic and actual critical thought. Because you can see it. My favorite example of this kind of thing is the left, where they are so anti-cop, and then they're also for cops being the only people with guns. It's like that. You realize that doesn't make any sense by your own logic. But anyways, so that's the same people. Is, you know, they'll trust their kids with school teachers and coaches and everything else doing all kinds of stuff, but then somehow guns bring out stupidity in people. They do, and I don't mean using them stupidly. I mean the fear or the fake fear or the trying to come up with some kind of argument against, because I just don't like him, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of that too is because, you know, a lot of people just haven't been around them or they're not, you know, real confident with them because of lack of experience.
Right.
But you know, and you're right, Lee. Seeing Lisa just made another comment on there. Says we also have teachers that are having sex with students, and that's absolutely right. But you know, those are probably not the ones that are going to show up to take the class. You know, I mean, and if they do, then even if they do, and even if they're nasty like that, you know, that's something that's not going to come out in that.
Hey, listen,
it doesn't mean they're going to shoot them.
I don't care if you're high on coke while you're teaching. If you defend kids, I mean, I'm just saying, at the point at which you use what we're teaching for the purpose it's meant, I really don't care about the rest of your character at that point.
Sure.
It's irrelevant.
So here's what I'm saying. Keep kids alive, then it's a benefit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So even if they are a bad teacher that's armed and will protect kids is better than just a bad teacher that's unarmed. I mean, they're already there in the school is my point.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going to be in the school, all I want them to be is have the right motivations and to be able to succeed at the training and do what they volunteered to do. Because that's another thing is the way the state of Ohio works, and at least a few other states that I know that armed teachers or armed staff, you're nothing more than a concealed carrier that happens to be at work. You have no duty. You, Chad, have a duty. You have duties. You have things you've sworn to do, things that we pay you and expect you to do, that you have some sort of duty to fulfill. Armed teachers have no duty to go chasing down a bad guy if they choose not to. This is basically a concealed carrier in their work atmosphere. And we've had to argue that a lot in front of the congressman. They want to talk about, well, you know, they got teaching to do, and we don't want to give them give them the duty. No, they don't have a duty. It's simply their choice. We're giving them the tools and the education to do it. We know in every school shooting, there are dead faculty, dead staff, people that are willing to put themselves in between the bad guy and the kids. And we give them no tools with which to survive or succeed. Faster wants to give them the tools and the ability to succeed.
That's really what it boils down to too. You know, if you got these same people, like what was the one where the guy was shot? Man, I'm terrible with memory, but the guy was shot and he was literally like crouched over his students, basically taking the rounds for him. I mean, honestly, man, that's courage that you don't see in any level of
It's almost every school shooting. You have one at least similar to that. Virginia Tech, there was a Holocaust survivor at Virginia Tech. He was like an astrophysics professor or something crazy like that. And his parents had taught him to always have an exit because they Holocaust survivors, right? So he taught at Virginia Tech. And when the shooting happened there, he had already, long before the shooting, already found a way at getting out these windows that didn't open. So when it started, he popped the windows out or did whatever he did. Then he sat with his back to the door, holding the door closed while his students escaped. He got shot through the door and killed through the door. But his students all escaped. There are staff willing to die to protect kids. Let's give them the tools and the training to succeed instead of just die.
Okay. Let me say this. Terry, would you do me a favor, please, sir?
Yes, sir.
It's hard for me to be able to engage in the conversation directly with Tom and watch the chat. I'm going to start. Tom, are you okay with taking questions? Are you okay?
Sure, I don't care.
Yeah. Okay. If anybody has a question for Tom, type it in the chat. And Terry, as you see it, if you'll just read it off to Tom and let him take questions, that'd be awesome, man.
Absolutely, no problem.
So if anybody has a question in regards to this, or Faster, or Buckeye Firearms, or whatever you may be interested in that Tom could help us with, and by all means.
Okay, this is a good time to bring up the A1S4 while we wait on a question.
Yes, I was actually going to remind you. I promise I hadn't forgotten.
Yep. Well, something you said reminded me of it. Buckeye Firearms Association was started by Jim Irvine. He's an American Airlines pilot and does all the lobbying for free. Has never taken a penny for it. Simply because he believes in guns, Second Amendment gun rights, people's right to self-defense, and now Faster. But I won't get into the details, so don't ask me any. Don't bring up any questions on this. But Buckeye Firearms, even though he was the president and their chief lobbyist for, 15 years, 17 years, they fired him. And a few years ago, and they hired a paid lobbyist. Buckeye Firearms Foundation is a separate organization. It's the nonprofit educational wing. So the foundation doesn't do any lobbying, like you mentioned, right? The foundation does no lobbying. We're not allowed to. We're an educational nonprofit. So Jim started, after he got fired from BFA, which was the political wing, he started A1S4. It was my idea. A1S4 is Article 1, Section 4 of the Ohio Constitution, is our Second Amendment for the state. So I told him, I said, he was trying to come up with a name for it. And I said, well, you know how like the Second Amendment Foundation has what it's about in its name? And there's other organizations all around the country that do that. The Right to Keep and Bear Arms, Foundation or whatever. I said, how about, since you're about Ohio, how about naming it after Ohio's version of the Second Amendment? So he already knew where it was. I didn't. And he goes, well, that's Article 1, Section 4. And I said, hey, how about A1S4? And he's like, I said, because that's like 2A. He's like, okay. So anyways, his new political PAC, his political action group that does the lobbying for Faster now, I'm not saying BFA doesn't help us. They do. They're still involved. But Jim Irvine is the president of BFF. He's the guy, the main reason Faster exists. He's the guy that did all the lobbying to get House Bill 99 passed. And his new organization, which would love your support, anybody's support, is A1S4. And the logo uses the S as the paragraph symbol because it's Section 4, Article 1, Section 4 of the Ohio Constitution.
That makes sense.
So it is. It's very cool. I'm very proud of it. So anyways, that's who does our lobbying now.
Okay. So there's one question I clicked on right there, Tom, if you want to read that off and address that.
I may have missed it. What was the inspiration for arming teachers and staff and deciding to go against the grain on the solution? Yeah, we did mention the genesis of the program earlier, but basically it was after the Newtown massacre. Hundreds of parents all around the state of Ohio were calling their local superintendents and school boards and saying, what can we do about this? One of those superintendents contacted Jim Irvine, the president of Buckeye Firearms Foundation, said, "Hey, how can we create something to respond to this?" And he contacted a guy named John Benner, who owns Tactical Defense Institute down in Southern Ohio, in Adams County. By the way, John Benner, Chad, was in charge of the Greater Cincinnati 4-county SWAT team for 30-some years. John Benner is one of the innovators of SWAT, and was also, after his retiring from Cincinnati area law enforcement, was the National Association of School Resource Officers national trainer. So he had a very in-depth knowledge of tactics, shooting, mindset, history. He was involved with SWAT basically from the San Ysidro, California massacre, McDonald's massacre, all the way up till, I don't know, way past post-Columbine. So he had been there through all the innovative changes, helped come up with some of them himself. So Jim Irvine contacted him and said, "John, do you have anything for this?" And John was like, "Oh, well, do I?" And he'd already developed the curriculum, and that is the curriculum that was the beginning of what Faster Saves Lives would become. It was a 5-day curriculum for actual law enforcement officers, school resource officers, and we knew that school staff wouldn't be able to do a 5-day program like that. So we cut out a lot of the things that was law enforcement specific and narrowed it down to a 3-day training course for level 1. And now they are required to have concealed carry class, which in Ohio is a minimum of 8 hours. Then they have a foundations class with me or another guy named Sean Payton here in the state. We teach the foundations, which is another 8 hours. And then they have 24 to 27 hours of faster before we will bless off on them. So they've had 16, 20, 24, 30, 40 hours plus of training before we hand them a certificate. So, but the genesis and the inspiration was the Newtown massacre.
Okay. Terry, what do you got? I know the questions are kind of backing up there.
Yeah, Lisa's asking what schools in Lawrence County have participated in your program?
The one that's public, there are more. I can't go into any more detail than that, but there's only one that's public, and that's Rock Hill. Rock Hill has a sign up. They were in the very beginning. They've come to me for additional refresher training as well. So I assume they will continue that program. They are very, very gung-ho about it, and they went on local news and the newspaper about it.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. I actually have an uncle that teaches there. I don't know if one in your class or not, but I do know for a fact that he is very well trained in firearms.
Okay. Unclean hands. How you doing, buddy? Okay. Anything else, Terry? What else you got, buddy?
Looks like Star 17 says, "Where are these teachers to keep these guns securely? On their person?" I would assume they would.
We can't dictate that. That is a school board decision or whoever they give the supervision of the program to. What we've seen is that a lot of schools that are a little leery about it will start with biometric safes located in strategic locations. And then as they train and as they learn more, they'll learn that's really not a good solution. Then eventually they get to on-body carry, which is what we recommend. As Chad knows, that's why, as a concealed carry instructor, nothing to do with schools at all. That's what I recommend. Off-body carry is just highly problematic in my opinion. So, but it's better than a rock, right? And as long as it's biometric safe and it's away from the kids, it is a possible solution. So we don't talk them out of it. We sort of take them as they come, kind of thing. And they'll consult us on new guns or new equipment or new techniques after they leave our training. They'll contact us back and ask for advice and so forth as they change the program and as they get better and they get more training with us or sometimes other people as well.
Jay Carr was asking if you were a teacher, Tom.
I'm a substitute teacher currently. I'm working with the state right now to get my, I don't know, they have crazy titles for everything, but it's like alternative licensure certificate or something or other. So yes and no. I'm a substitute teacher, but working on full time, hopefully soon.
Do you think having armed staff at schools will be a deterrent?
We know that bad guys in general go where they're, pick the weakest targets. We know that in the animal kingdom. We can observe that in criminal behavior, especially now in an era where we have cameras everywhere. We've seen, and you can go on YouTube, look this up. You can watch bad guys staking out people, and the people that show them any kind of dominance or awareness, they avoid, and they go after the weak. the Colorado theater shooter passed up. It was either 2 or 3 or 4 theaters that allowed gun carry into the theater, and he scoped this out ahead of time. And he went to a theater, a cinema that didn't allow people to carry guns. He went there intentionally. So yes, I do think it's a deterrent. Is there any way to quantify that or prove it? Not really, because it's kind of hard to prove what never happens.
Looks like Scott was saying, Tom, thank you for being here and for what you were doing. He is curious on your thoughts. What are your thoughts on armed civilians engaging prior to police intervention if the opportunity arises?
I'm assuming you're talking about in the context of faster, after the teacher has pulled out a gun and done something with it, whether it's just subdue the bad guy, freeze him in his tracks, or kill, or whatever. I'm assuming you're talking when cops arrive. That's part of what our courses in crisis management is. We teach them that, for one, when you go to respond, odds are somebody else in the school has already called 911, or you at least have to assume they are, which means that law enforcement may be on their way while you're still doing something with the gun. We also teach them, and we give them examples in training of body language. Chad will probably tell you, you generally know the bad guy upon glancing at them. You generally know in a situation you walk in who the aggressor, who the bad guy is, and who is the submissive, surrendering, scared person. There's trying to remember where it's at. We use that as an example. It's a trolley. There's a mall somewhere called the Trolley Center or something. Anyways, there was an unarmed cop on a lower floor of the mall running towards the bad guy as the uniformed cop was upstairs. And as they're running both with guns out, they see each other. And the cop didn't even, he said in his own testimony and everything, he said, well, I could just tell by his body language he was another good guy. They were both running toward the gunfire. And, you can't predict every scenario. So we train them to be prepared for the arrival of law enforcement. When law enforcement usually arrives, they're usually announcing themselves. Somebody's going to tell you they're arriving. You may have heard sirens. They're going to sound different coming down the hall because they're coming to you where everybody else is trying to get away from what's going on. So there's a lot of context, a lot of clues, a lot of body language, a lot of psychology involved. But obviously we tell them, and it's part of the class, if possible at all, get the gun out of your hands and get your hands up. We also teach them, if possible and if a good idea, to take an older kid or another staff member and have them go out and pre-stage to meet law enforcement and let law enforcement know what you are doing and who you are so they don't come in and mistake you for the bad guy. So there's a lot more involved to it than just saying, well, here's step 1, 2, 3. It's a lot of, it's how we teach everything. Self-defense in general, Chad will tell you this, self-defense in general is not a fill-in-the-blanks situation. It's not like drive 55 and you're legal, drive 56 and you're illegal. Doesn't work like that.
First of all, it's the same thing if you ever wrestled in school in Alaska. You don't realize it. I trained at the Tiger Den. I trained with them guys out there at Las Vegas. I got that white tiger. Oh, wait a minute. That was a different thing too. But anyway,
the Tiger King. He's more likely to train with the Tiger King, I think.
All right, Tom, are they required to come back to training to keep up on it after so long? And if so, do the schools pay or enforce them to do that? Or would that work is the question.
The only legal requirements in the past, like I said, there was one law that quit being effective in June 2021. Previous to that, there was no law governing what they had to have. The requirements on training was up to simply the school board. The school board could lay it out themselves. They could ask us to say, what do you require? They could say to the superintendent or the guy they put in charge of security, you monitor it. I mean, it was whatever, which is, I think, good. In the long run, I think local control is best. However, as of just last month, we have a new law in Ohio, and it will come up with training requirements. We still got to iron those out, and we're consulting with the Ohio staff that's going to be in charge of that, the bureaucrats. So yes, and we also offer if a school gets sued, which anytime you get involved in anything like this, somebody's going to sue you. So and not to mention if the school or somebody at school gets prosecuted, or anytime this goes to court, as long as they stay trained up in our requirements, then we offer our support. We will testify for free in courts. like I said, we already defended one school with, I believe, over $200,000 in legal fees. That was one of our schools and was getting sued because of it. So we'll stand by you. And yes, there are some recurring training required to keep our stamp of approval. But we don't have state authority or any legal authority to say.
Tom, can I interrupt you for a minute?
Sure.
Will you please? There's your question right there. This Archangel
using a drone in an active shooting scene to locate and tranquilize the shooter. What, you want me to talk about that?
Oh, he's already asked he's already asked earlier in the chat, and I was going to try to ignore it because
that's not a question form. So is that
okay? So let me put it in a question. Do you think it's a feasible idea to think that you could use a drone in a police shooting or an active shooter or whatever the line may be there? Tell me about how a weapon will or a firearm would be the only possibility for defense, or do you think this drone would work with a dart gun? You can't make this up. He's dead serious too. He's serious as a heart attack.
Okay, I'm gonna try real hard to. Okay.
Thank you, Unclean Hands. I'm assuming you're talking about that. Yes, it's the second dumbest thing I've ever heard. I mean, seriously, this guy literally he got on. Let me just give you a background story. We got on the other day on a debate, and he says that there should be a third option like a drone. Well, here's my problem with that. First of all, that's stupid. It's stupid. You don't go fight somebody that's got a gun with a freaking drone that's got a dart gun in it.
Okay. Well, first off, while this person's killing people, where's the drone going to come from?
He's flying like the Jetsons.
I mean, if it's still going on and that's the fastest thing you can get there, sure, hit him with a tranquilizer while you're waiting on something else more effective to show up. Yeah. I mean, I could dream up what ifs of where that. We live in Wyoming, right? And there's a mass shooting going on at a cattle ranch, and nobody at a cattle ranch happens to have a gun. So it's faster to get the drone there than it is a cop.
No. See, you're putting way too much into this. You're putting way too much. You're putting way too much reasoning into this. Okay, so he thinks that in place of a cop with a gun, that there should be somebody running a drone with a dart gun.
Okay, is that person listening to us right now?
He was in the chat, I'm assuming. Arch, if you're there, go ahead and say something brilliant again.
Do we know if he's there? Okay, I'll talk to him. I'll talk to him even if he's not here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
he'll troll me later anyway. So go ahead.
So let me ask you this, Archangel for Truth. I'm sure there's somebody in your life that you love, and maybe somebody that loves you if you're lucky.
He's here. He said he's here.
Okay, so if somebody you love has a gun pointed at their head right now, they're next on this killer's list. And it can happen in any split second. Are you cool with a tranquilizer that is not instantaneous? Or would you rather something stop the killing right now? So what you're saying is basically the exact opposite of what faster saves lives is. You're saying slow is okay. That's your organization. Slow is okay.
Hey, Anthony, what's going on, man? I think your dog woke up, Tom.
No, it's not mine.
Oh. That was mine. Sorry about that.
Mine almost never barks.
I've got one more question for you here.
Says, actually, I just want to say, Arch, I'm just giving you a hard time, man. I don't have to see eye to eye for me to. I'm just razzing you, bud. The reality is, I know you're asking a question that you're genuinely concerned with, and I'm just playing along the part, just being silly. You're more.
I'm not going to say it's never
sure.
maybe a standoff or a hostage situation, or there may be a reason for it, but it's just like I tell concealed carry students about less than lethal. Your pepper sprays, your stun guns, your all that bullshit, which isn't bullshit. Sorry. They aren't substitutes for each other. Some people say, I don't want to carry a gun, so I carry pepper spray. Well, listen, if you need a gun, the pepper spray ain't going to do you any good. And if you should be using pepper spray legally and you use a gun, now you're going to prison. They're not substitutes for each other. They each have their own roles. And what you're saying may have a valid role somewhere, but it's not an instead of.
But what about a pellet gun in a bicycle rally when you're trying to ride your tricycle and down there and everybody just keeps shooting you with it like that just because you're causing all the trouble?
Well, the fact is there is no one size fits all when it comes to
Right,
protection,
exactly.
whether it's personal, whether you're protecting someone else or someone else's children. There is no one size fits all answer for any of that.
That's why I say there's no fill in the blanks answer.
Sure. Anybody else got the questions, Terry?
Yeah, Star 17 was asking, what if a kid gets violent? He or she maybe grabs for the gun. They aren't going to be trained in hand-to-hand combat, nor maybe going to be strong enough to hang on to the gun.
Well, first off, there's an awful lot of assumptions going on there in that question. I don't accept the premise that, one, the kid even knows there's a gun there. If they do, the teacher's already failed.
I would agree with that statement.
Yeah, they shouldn't even know the gun's there. And if they do, the teacher's already failed what we tell them, at least. Second off, the idea you just immediately said they're not going to be strong enough. I don't know where you get that assumption. What kind of teachers you got in your schools? Yeah, there are teachers that won't be strong enough, and there are teachers that are plenty strong enough. So I don't know where that part came from.
I guess it's going to assume on who's actually going to sign up to take this, because just because this school actually passes, the state passes, doesn't mean that everybody there is going to be wanting to do this.
No, it's people that volunteer.
Sure.
And there are people that listen. The number one complaint we get, or not complaint, concern we get when they get to our class and we start talking is especially teachers that deal with autistic children or certain or kindergartners, and they get hugged a lot. But it's the same thing I teach in concealed carry, a civilian concealed carry. Excuse me. Everybody's got to figure out what works for them. The way I carry won't work for everybody. The way Miss Smith down the street carries wouldn't work for me, right? I don't wear skirts. I don't wear 50 different varieties of clothing like a lot of women do. Women in general have a lot more issues, and not in a negative sense, but just issues to solve when it comes to concealed carrying. And it's going to be no different for a teacher. But that's their job. That's what they've accepted to do. If they decide they're not going to conceal, then guess what? They're not going to be allowed to carry in the schools. You got to remember too, this is the people that have, at least in their own mind, believe they're willing to die for the kids. You think they're going to just expose the gun? I mean, it's kind of like I said, I don't really accept the premise of the question, because it's just not, it doesn't fall within my experience of the people that show up for this kind of training. This is not an 8-hour CCW class. This is 16 hours standing out on a hot range, having somebody yell at you about things you've never had to do before or you've never done, trying to make you better at them. This is us putting you through insane high adrenaline situations to test your decision-making skills and so forth. This is not for your wilting violet. These people are very serious and very dedicated about protecting children. Easily 90% of what shows up. And I told you, we attempt to deal with those that we believe aren't serious.
Another question is, why are you proposing teachers become security instead of hiring security?
Well, he wasn't. That's at
you
the very
posed
beginning.
as, yeah. You posed that as an either or.
Said,
that's not an either or. We suggest both.
Yes, absolutely. If you actually listen to what he was talking about,
if you have armed security, we know this from studying previous mass shootings in schools and other places. They don't go to where the cop stands to commit their crime. They find out where the cops are and go to the opposite end of the mall or go to the opposite end of the school. And believe it or not, structures like homes and schools, especially schools and buildings made out of concrete and block, act like gigantic suppressors. You could be firing a gun in room 101 and upstairs in room 208 not even hear anything. And it's very common if you listen to people. Well, as a matter of fact, on Amazon Prime, they have a show called, I think it's called Murder in Building 12, but it's about the Parkland shooting, and they interview all the people that survived that were there. And several of them talk about, well, we just thought it was like a book hitting the floor or something going on in shop class. Yeah, that idea just doesn't, it's just not the reality.
What else you got, Terry?
I just want to comment on a statement that I see here. I agree that it really does suck that we have to have this conversation. I know all three of us here on this panel wish that our children were safe everywhere they went. Unfortunately, that's just not the truth in the world.
Right. That is
I want to say, Arch, I absolutely agree with you. I think they should do drills like they do fire drills for active shooters. And I
We
think
do.
there's a lot of schools that do that. Yeah, because
We
I've
do.
actually done a little bit of that stuff.
So I teach run, hide, fight as well for businesses and churches. I've never taught a school. Well, I've taught private schools, but never a public school. But then Faster, our organization, also offers separate from the armed staff training. We offer combat casualty care training, where we'll go into a school and train those that are armed and those that aren't armed. We'll train the entire school staff in combat casualty, and we'll also do run, hide, fight, which is a total staff training. So we're not even pushing for people to be armed that don't want to be armed. We deal with schools that have no guns on the premises. We teach the medical and the run, hide, fight to schools that can't get approval for the guns in the first place. So we're not just a one-trick pony.
Excellent.
Well, I tell you what, I think I agree for a lot of the people. I know that I personally want to thank you, Tom, for what
Thank you. I appreciate you saying
that. I personally believe it is 100% necessary. I hate it that it is, but I do believe that it is 100% necessary. And I want to say thank you, because at least sitting here listening to you, I know that you're an intelligent, articulate guy, and it scares me to death too to think that some people have firearms and try to train and teach others. So I'm glad to meet one of those. Confidence in them.
Yeah, I that's one thing I understand about the anti-gun or the ungunned crowd that are just have a fear of it. The more you get to know humans, the more I'm amazed there aren't more accidents.
Yeah, that's a fact. That is a fact.
I'm glad there aren't. I'm glad that the logic doesn't work in my head, but I find it amazing people don't accidentally shoot themselves more when I see your average gun person's safety levels. It's pretty disappointing.
I know a lot of people that own a lot of firearms, and unfortunately, not all of them are safe.
Right. Yep. It's
sure.
I'd say it's rare that I find your average gun person has good safety skills. It's rare that they do. It's kind of the other way around. I started about 3 years ago in my CCW class and in other classes too. I teach gun safety. I try to drill it in people's heads. It's its own skill. So think about this. Statistically, none of us are going to need, well, Chad, other than Chad, statistically, he's going to need his gun at some point. Statistically, us civilians will never need our concealed carry, never need our gun. And that's a great thing. But statistically, it's 100% certain we all need our safety skills, because the most likely person to shoot you when you own a gun is you. Now, that's not groundbreaking. That's not like giving one to the anti-gun crowd, right? Because guess who the most likely person is to wreck my truck? That's also me, because I'm the guy driving it. Right, exactly. So it's not some amazing truth that their anti-gun crowd has come up with, but it is true though, and they like to use it against us. And that's why I tell people, treat your safety skills like a completely separate skill set. Everyone comes and wants to learn marksmanship or their version of marksmanship when they come to a combat shooting. They want to hit the target well and be proud of the holes they make on a piece of paper. That's cool. But what nobody wants to be proud of is their safety skills. And I try to drill it in their head. That's 100% necessary, use it every day skill set. It's very important to you and everybody around you.
Real fast, I just seen this from J-Car. I didn't know that, J-Car, I didn't know that you were saying anything, dear. I'm sorry. I'm distracted. I'm trying to watch back and forth and be honest with you.
A lot of these conversations are going on between people in the chat.
Okay.
And don't necessarily have anything to do with us.
Okay.
But while there's a bit of a break, Scott Hubert had said the same thing. He said he's grateful for you, Tom, and people like you, that you're out there working to try to correct the situation. Great guy, and so glad I was able to listen to him.
Thank you. I very appreciate that very much.
And I want you guys to realize too, man, you guys are all my people. Like whether you agree or don't agree, I'm just here to let everybody talk. Okay. I happen to be a gun guy. I'm a hillbilly. Okay. And that's the way, you know what, that's just kind of the way I kind of grew up. So it doesn't mean that anybody's right or wrong. These are just different angles that we're looking at. Okay. I don't want anybody to think that I'm not up for hearing everybody. I am. I'm really not very tech savvy, and I'm trying to like watch everything that's going on. And honestly, I'm watching my Wi-Fi signal because at times it kind of goes crazy on me.
Apparently I was wrong, Captain.
Okay.
So, J-Car just informed me, not true, Ironton Auditor. So I assume I was wrong, that they weren't talking to anyone else in the chat. They're talking to one of the three of us, I assume.
Okay, J. Carr, if you'll repeat the question. I'm so sorry. I really just didn't see it. I apologize. I'm not very good at this, I guess. Let's see here.
Oh, and by the way, for everybody out there, since I've actually had an opportunity to ride up close and personal with the captain, he and I obviously don't see eye to eye on everything, but the great thing is we don't have to. There are some things we can agree to disagree on, and we can still be cordial with one another. We don't have to hate each other because we don't agree 100% on everything.
Uncle Artie, I don't answer questions. Okay, don't you know that? I'm a First Amendment guy. Okay, I go around and I ask the questions. Okay, I go around and I get in your face and I yell and I act like a jerk, and then I tell you you're not allowed to be a jerk.
Uncle Artie did ask a question. He said, does using a certain type of hollow point get you in more trouble with the prosecutor if you get charged with using a gun?
Okay, here's the answer on this. If
this has been tried actually before, where there was a guy shot somebody with a 10 millimeter.
Right, and here's why. Here's why it's been tried. If a prosecutor thinks you're the bad guy, it's their job to use everything they can to convict you. So now, if the prosecutor thinks you're the good guy and you're on their side, they may use that same hollow point to make you look like a good guy. Their job is to put you in jail if they believe you're the bad guy. So yes, they will use, because I used to hear when I first got involved with guns, you need to find out what your local law enforcement carries and carry the exact same thing, because then they can't use it against you. But guess what? There have been prosecutors that said, what, you think you're law enforcement? You think you're that? Oh, you shouldn't be using what they use. If you use something different, they can use it against you. If you use a variety, they can use it against you. In the end, don't do bad shit.
In my opinion, and you guys can agree or disagree with me here, I would assume, in my opinion, you should always carry hollow points when you're in public. And the reason I say that is because Solid knows if you don't want to shoot the 2 or 3 people behind the guy or woman you're trying to shoot, you need a hollow point. That way it stops in the victim you're shooting, period.
Yeah, a lot of the media likes to say things that aren't true, okay? First of all, the movies in Hollywood paint an unreal expectation of a firearm. A hollow point doesn't blow up inside of you. It doesn't blow your lungs out, despite what the commander-in-chief said or whatever. So,
Educator, apparently J. Carr was actually a survivor of a school shooting, is what I'm reading here.
Oh my!
I had no idea of this, so
I didn't either. J. Carr,
apparently they feel that they're not welcome here.
Well, that's never the case with me. You guys know me better than that. Come on now. I mean, you guys are my people. I don't want you guys to feel like that. By all means, if you got something to say, if I don't know the answers, then I'll lie and I'll say Chili does.
Well, no, I'd like to hear what he had to say that we missed.
Let's see Justin here.
Is he gone? He's just trying to be like Chili.
No, I think, let me see here. Yeah, I thought I looked ravishing in these. Why is everybody going to be talking about my headphones? Wait a minute. Like this.
Okay. There you go. That looks better. Now all you need are some red or pink glasses. You'll be good to go.
See, I just don't have them, so I don't have my glasses. But if I did, I would use them. So I'm skipping around the chat here.
Archangel for Truth says if you put foil behind your Wi-Fi router, about 15 inches, 2 foot long, to see if that helps. I guess it's kind of like the old rabbit ear type thing, help funnel some of the Wi-Fi into the router.
Really? I mean, is that true?
Well, that's what I just read it.
It's only going to cost you 8 cents in aluminum foil.
But I don't have. Okay, first of all, Tom, I'm a policeman. Okay, I'd have to actually put out my Cash App to be able to afford that.
You know, did you ever watch the old Married with Children episode where they would say Fox viewing positions and everybody like stand on one foot, stick one arm in the air? I remember that kind of stuff as a kid to be able to watch TV with an antenna.
I do remember that. I do. Certainly do. I can say this, teacher. Oh, let me read. I've seen something just popped up from JCAR. I can say this. We teachers my eyes are a lot worse than I thought. We'll discuss weapons in school. Overwhelming response, no. Well, and I think that's what they're getting at, JCAR, is it's something, it's an individual thing.
Yeah.
You know, if it's something that you guys don't want or your school doesn't want or whatever, it's not something you have to partake in. This is just saying that it allows the opportunity if somebody chooses to. That's what, and by all means, yeah, if somebody wants to Terry, is there a way you could figure out how to send J Car a link?
A link to the panel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, can we just get? I could throw it in the chat here.
Sure.
Give me just a second. I'll throw it up there.
I'm not for pushing anybody to become armed that doesn't want to be.
I am with Cobra Kai. With that right there.
There you go. The link's in the chat.
Good Lord. Who knows who you're going to get now?
Well, I'm just going to bring J Car up.
He has control. He don't have to let him up.
Oh, okay.
Did you hear that? I got control. Of course, I don't know what to do with it.
Oh, by the way, Scott said maybe instead of the aluminum foil trick, you just buy yourself a new and better router. How about that one?
Why got to be bringing up old stuff?
Now we're back to the paycheck again.
Better get that Cash App up and running.
Okay, J Car, I understand. And I want you to know that nobody would attack you at all. If you want to get on here and talk, I promise you. Oh my gosh, look who's trying to come on.
Hi, baby. What you doing there, Chatty Poo?
What's up, Uncle Artie?
How you doing,
I had
Uncle
to
Artie?
come up and say, hey, I'm in the pool right now watching you.
Oh my gosh. Well, there's an image.
Yeah, I'm swimming for you, baby. You gotta get out here.
Hey, Captain. Now
if you're taking that as a
settled down,
innuendo.
Hang on just a second. Terry, go ahead.
Now that the questions have settled down a bit, I'm going to have to drop out. I have a quick run to make. If you're still on here in a little bit, I'll be right back, but it'll take me about 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay, sure.
Unfortunately, Ironton Auditor is only part of what I do. I am a fix-it guy, and I got to go take care of something real quick. I'll be back.
Okay, later.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you for helping me.
Good to see you, Uncle Artie. Hi and bye to everybody in the chat. If I don't catch you again tonight, it was wonderful seeing everybody. Tom, thank you so very much for being
Thank
you. I appreciate it.
Hey, J Car, if you can stick around just for a second, if you would like to do a live stream with just being you, maybe later on in the week after you get some notes together or something, and I'd be more than happy to. I mean, if you want to speak on it, if you don't, I understand that too. But if it's something you would like to talk to, I mean, I don't have very much of a platform, but you're more than welcome to come on my stream, and I'll set one up just specifically for you if you'd like to come on and talk, and it'll just be me and you if that's what you'd like.
How about we bring Archangel back up? Me and him were supposed to debate yesterday.
He said his battery's about to die, so good night. So Art, good night.
Yeah, the one thing at least he is right is that aluminum foil, the back of an antenna on your router, it's like a satellite dish. It concentrates it a little bit more. So it'll bounce off the back of it, the aluminum foil, and the antenna picks it up a little bit more. So
Sort of a directional thing.
yeah, exactly. It just concentrates a little bit more, but it's not perfect. But the bad part is if anybody's trying to pick up signal back behind it, there's a good chance that signal is going to be totally lost, or it's going to be severely degraded.
Well, what you could do, Chad, is put it like behind it and the wall, so it's not funneling it outside.
True. Hang on, I'm trying to type here. Sorry, I can't.
Yeah, the higher you put it, and the less obstructed, the better. Sometimes if you get taller antennas, they got more dBi ratings or decibel ratings, it'll help boost the signal a little bit.
Oh my gosh, I just realized that you really are. I can hear the water now, Artie.
Told you.
Hey, by the way, but look, it's man, you got it made.
Where is that?
Got it made. That's Uncle Artie.
Where?
I'm in Texas. I'm down around Dallas.
I was getting ready to say, because it's dark here.
Yeah.
The sun's barely up.
It's
just some cheapy inflatable pools I'm in.
So I got a question since we still have a few in the chat, since we've kind of went over a few topics here. Has Sweetie had anything new lately? Has anybody noticed? Because I'm just I got my people up here. I'm just.
I watched part of his thing here probably about 15, 20 minutes ago. He's showing some video from a little pin camera thing that somebody snuck in, and he's trying to push that the thing's constitutional and you should be allowed to record because that keeps the judges honest.
Yeah, he's back. Justin says he's in Hollywood.
Yeah, that DWI thing that he was at with that lady and all that stuff. The one thing that he doesn't realize is that if she had listened to him, she automatically would have lost her license for a year, whether she was drunk or not.
About refusing?
Yep. A lot of states are like that. I don't know about Ohio.
Yeah, with implied consent. Isn't that what it's called, Chad?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can refuse and all that. You don't have a warrant.
When you accept the driver's license, that's when
it's a prerequisite to get a driver's license in most states.
Yeah. Right.
Let's see.
Scott, I still think he was
thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. He says he'll be there to fight you, but did not have to be there the night because he's in control. Because he's alpha. You know what? He may not even make me be there. He may send me a note like he did when he served people, when he writes on the back of a chewing gum wrapper. And he'll send me a note and say, you ain't got to be there because he's going to virtual fight me, folks. He's going to hurt me with mean words.
Yeah, show me one fight where it has ever done that way. Weigh-ins, contract signings, and all that stuff. It's always face to face.
Well, they will do the signing sometimes, via an e-contract type thing or whatever. But here's the thing. This is what people seem to. This is where I try to explain. It's so hard, man, to do stuff in the chat. You know what I mean? When I'm replying on comments and I'm trying to reply to sound like I'm making sense, but not sound silly. But you can sign via an e-contract or whatever. But what we failed to mention is this original thing was supposed to be to kind of hype the fight to begin with and to generate revenues for St. Jude's and for the community. He gave his word to be there for a good cause. You see what I'm saying? Like, I mean, if you're going to do it, do it. Don't go back on your word. Well,
he's the one that started the whole thing, anyways.
Yeah. Well, actually, Tom, you were there, weren't you? You were there when he came up to my window that day. That was when that's when the Mega Mouth started.
Yeah, were you two repressing people's civil rights?
I don't know.
Oh, how dare you guys?
Smitty, are you wanting to come up? I just seen that.
Oh, man. The irony is that when you went live and all that stuff, where I work at, I do computer support, and I'm setting up a brand new lawyer's computer. I'm like, isn't that irony?
It never fails to have something, though, does it? Chad, you don't tell him. That's true.
Chad, you.
That's right.
Oh man, if I could go get my mullet hat and my Cholito glasses.
Oh, you know what? I gotta address this. All right, is everybody? You guys know me well enough by now to know not to take everything I say like super serious, right? I mean, seriously, I'll be like just enough serious to like kind of address it, but like
except for you were serious about suing us all.
Yeah, I'm going to sue you, Uncle Artie.
Woohoo! Make sure it's a federal lawsuit.
Let me tell you what we used to say when we get out there and the rain start pouring down and stuff. We would kind of be silly and it's like when the wipers come on, the work goes off. We don't want to stop cars in the rain, But that's obviously being silly. I've actually been on really bad crashes before that, I mean, talking like downpours. And I'm like, yes, Smitty, you're by all means allowed. Absolutely. So I'm guessing the link's still in there. Artie, can you put that link back in there? Because obviously
I'm not able to.
Let me see if I can access it from here.
Oh, man. Ow. Yeah, on the invite button, if you copy that and then just go over to the browser thing, you can stay right there within the same window for StreamYard and post it in there. Just click on the public chat thing. Here I am actually breaking character, being me. Oh, well. Fuck it. Like I really give a shit.
I believe that's it.
Yeah, my neighbors already think I'm weird enough as it is, but fuck it.
I can't imagine that. Hey, listen, what Uncle Artie don't want to tell you is this, okay? The reason that Chili was in Texas is because Uncle Artie had asked him to come down and hang out.
Yeah, you know. I was trying to seduce him, you know. Chad, if you weren't going to do it, you're scared of him.
I'm scared of him. I'm scared of him.
No, I think you're scared of what your wife would do to you.
Well, yeah, that too. For sure.
But I'll have you know I had to shave my head bald because that guy in the middle, I'm bald too.
Oh, see, he wanted to be like
shaved my head bald just for you.
He wanted to be like Tom.
I don't save any money on shampoo, by the way.
Still wash your head with shampoo or your beard?
Both.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's something that it never really hit me before, but somebody was like, mentioned that. It's like, you do realize that shampoo is actually for treating your scalp, not your hair, right? I'm like, what? Right. It's like,
no, the very first time I shaved bald, I thought, man, I could just use soap now. Oh my God, it flaked and made all kinds of, it was bad. So I had to go back to shampoo.
Pussy.
Yep. So no, don't save a penny on shampoo.
Yeah, by the way, I've seen that Stars. What happened to the sounding board? What happened to Lyles? Anybody know?
I haven't seen anything since last time he put a video out. Or
I guess I can't find his channel. Is anybody can anybody confirm that his channel is no longer up? Because I see Terry's back up here. Hey Terry, you there?
Yes, sir. Sorry about that. Just had a neighbor that needed a quick jump start, so it worked out pretty good.
Chad said he needs a jump start.
Man, I'm already jump started, but I'm crashing down today. Man, we had that rain come through today, and I just done a little. My training was kind of limited today, but I went ahead just for everybody to know I did do the 2.2 miles. I done like 3 miles total, I think, or something like that. But I done my bike today. So, but anyway, it was so rainy and so nasty. I was like, gosh, I was like trying to get the ride in real fast because like I was getting like nasty on my legs and stuff from the water like spraying up on me. I was like, ugh.
Oh, by the way, Chad, I haven't done any so far, but like I said, I'm headed down to Louisiana tomorrow for that first person defender. I'll be back Sunday. So Monday, I plan on beginning participating.
I'll tell you what, I can't commit to 2 miles a day. So I live right about 10 miles out of Ironton. So I have somebody that's going to pick me up in there. I'm going to walk from here into Ironton and do that a couple times to get my 20 in. So.
Well, and something that I'd actually kind of pitched everybody too is even if you can't do 2.2 miles a day, give me 22 total miles for the month.
That's my plan.
So and make sure that we push the issue. We remind everybody what we're doing, right? Because I mean, that's what it's all about. It's a shame that our men and women in uniform obviously have the struggles that they do when they're active, but then when they come home and they have to deal with what they have to. Let's add Smitty.
You know, I actually read once when they come home from Desert Storm, actually, we had veterans from Desert Storm who actually starved and froze to death in Central Park in New York.
That's
if you believe that kind of thing. I mean, that is sad that happens.
Smitty, what's up?
Hello, Smitty, how you doing?
Okay, can you hear me, Smitty?
I can hear you.
Schmitty, where are you, Schmitty?
You hear me?
We got you, bud. We got you.
All right, I got my earbuds and haven't used these in years.
Oh well, you're trying to be like Chili.
No, my Chili headphones don't work. I can hear, but I can't.
Hey, that's okay. His don't either, I'm sure.
Well, it's attached to something that don't work either.
That's for sure.
The only thing that works is his loud mouth.
He's a constitutional scholar.
Yeah.
So he is.
Nice to meet you guys.
Explain how the hell filing federal lawsuits is going to change the system.
Hey, you know what? This is something. Tom, are you okay with talking a little law constitution now that we kind of drifted a little bit? Because see, Tom legitimately is a constitutionalist. Like he studied at Ohio State
University.
But is he a constitutional law scholar? I
Well,
think
he's
that's
not
what
like
everybody needs answered.
he's not like the constitutional law scholar that we all know and love.
He's a hell of a lot more
Hey.
qualified than Cholito.
Talito.
Or Cholita.
I know
like
more
it.
than your average bear, and on certain issues, way more than your average lawyer. So it's according to what we talk about.
Sure. So, and that's kind of what we're looking. Here's the problem with what I found, and I'm by no means a constitutional scholar or anything, but I am. I consider myself a patriot, so I like to think that I know a little bit about what it means. So, but the reason I say that is this: I am a true believer, folks. True believer in liberty. That's my thing. And Chile likes to think that laws are a negative thing that contradict the Constitution. And that's not the case. That's not what law is for. Tom, you and I've talked about this before, and you know what my stance is on it.
Yeah.
But he likes to throw things out that are just absolute nonsense. I mean, and he's just out there left field stuff.
So is this where you're wanting me to go over the discussion we had yesterday about left becomes right, right becomes left?
Oh man, do you have your whiteboard?
Dude, I was ready.
Oh, I got a question for you real quick before you get started.
Sure.
Oh shit! Now you made me forget, motherfucker.
And just real fast, J. Carr, I'll have you in my prayer. I had no idea of any of that, but you'll be in our prayers.
Oh man, well, what's going on? Oh yeah, Chile was trying to pick up a woman at a DWI stop on Friday. I think it was Friday or Saturday.
He's an opportunist.
Yeah, and he had told the lady, "Yeah, don't do their tests and all that. Where's the victim? There's no victim of the crime." My theory is that the victim is public safety. It is the state has made a law. So you break the law, the victim is actually the state or we the people. Would that be anywhere correct?
Yes. Well, first off, it falls under the police powers of the states. That's why there's no federal DUI. I mean, there is if you're on a federal installation, but I mean, you can't be DUI so bad it's federal. It's a state by state issue.
Yeah,
because it falls under the state police powers.
Absolutely, which is a 10th Amendment thing. And that's a crime against society is potentially what DUI is. It's the way it's listed in Ohio.
Yep.
Maybe people should just have enough sense not to drive high or drunk, and it wouldn't be a problem. I mean, maybe that's the answer instead of less policing. It's just an idea.
We just got to. Yeah, exactly. If you were actually just a person of virtue and respect, that you wouldn't put other people at harm, but.
Maybe I'll just grow up and take care of yourself. And, I don't know.
Yeah, it goes back to what Tom was saying at the beginning. More armed, educated people, less crime or less violence. You're more protected.
Two armed men are all polite to each other. That's been my experience.
Yep. We don't need Chad as much to rely on as far as for our safety. I mean, no offense, dude, but you know what I'm getting at.
Absolutely. And yes, J. Carr on reservations, but that's a federal property. So that's the way that works.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. On a federal, well, no, reservations aren't federal. They're ruled by Indian law, except where the federal government is still stepping in and saying no.
Right.
Like they just did recently, by the way. The Supreme Court just ruled that civilians can take authority over non-Indians that commit crimes on Indian reservations.
Is that right? I didn't know that. I was.
Yeah,
sorry.
no, that was like last week when the Supreme Court was still handing out rulings. That's brand new.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know if that's because Indians were trying to prosecute people. They didn't want to deal with people. I'm not sure what it was.
Is that serious? Did Chili really say that?
Yes, he did.
It's a good thing he's such a scholar. That scholar still means he's a student. Am I correct in saying that? Scholar means student. It doesn't actually mean you're an expert in any damn thing. Just if we're throwing around words here.
I think you're correct.
Yeah, I think it means you've basically made a study out of the.
Or you are studying.
Yes.
Which I would assume every expert is also a scholar, but they wouldn't call themselves a scholar.
Right. Absolutely. And that's, and J Car, that's what we're talking about. Like that's see, because of the way the reservations are, it's still governed under a federal justice system as well, kind of like a military base.
Correct. Yep. DUI is also a crime on a military base.
Yes.
Yeah. Would they refer it to the well, if you're a civilian, I'm sure they'd refer it to the county that it resides in, the military post.
Correct.
But like you were saying earlier, that at least for the special forces, that you guys would try to turn it over to the locals.
Oh yeah, if we can turn it over to locals, that's the first thing we want to do. But an active duty service member driving drunk and arrested by MPs on a base, you wouldn't be able to turn it over. They're active duty. But like guys that live off post, and maybe they did a crime that was on post and off post, where we had the option to prosecute them, but we also have the option to give them to civilians, we give them to civilians. But there's some things that are just military, though.
Hey, Smitty, what happened to you, bud? Are you there, Smitty?
Uncle Artie's big mouth got in the way.
Smitty, can you hear me? I think he's having some problems, looks like.
Yeah.
But actually, I'm getting ready to wrap this up anyway, guys. We went about 2.5 hours. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the same thing we did before. Anybody who's got anything to say, Tom, I'll let you close it out first, since you're my main guest tonight. I'll let you kind of have your last word here, and then we'll just keep moving on.
Okay, so this is saying bye. That's what we're doing.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. No, it's just a pleasure to have to be asked to be here, and it was the first time I've ever done any kind of interview or anything with Faster that just had time to chill. It wasn't about getting out all the bullet points I wanted as fast as possible. So it was kind of cool being able to. It was, you intermixed it with personal and the Faster, and it was nice getting to know some other people. And I'm always happy to get the word out about Faster and spread the word that it exists and what it truly is about, instead of the misinformation. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Terry, Iron Auditor.
Hey, first of all, I want to say hi and bye to everybody out there. Always love seeing everybody. To you, Captain, always the utmost respect to you. I appreciate you inspiring me even. And Tom, it was great to hear from you, man. I've learned a lot, and I appreciate it. And I'm glad there's people out there like you taking care of it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Uncle Artie, what you got, bud?
Yeah, I think there's a website, Brave the Beast 2010 or something like that, a channel. You guys got to go get that guy over 100.
That's right. That's my boy,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Male adult that's in the background videos. Go subscribe to that kid's channel. Pretty cool kid.
Yeah, he is a good kid. So, guys, I just want to say I appreciate everybody, man. I'm still learning at this, and I'm kind of going as I go here. I got a pretty full plate. I'm a husband and a father and a police officer, and the whole 9 yards. And I'm trying to get my old fat butt in shape to do a fight that I haven't done anything like this since I was about 17 years old. So it's been a long time for me to actually be punched in the face in a sporting event. But anyway, I really do appreciate everybody. And you guys don't realize how much you actually mean to me from a motivation day in and day out. It's unbelievable. I really honestly can't say enough thank you. And I appreciate everybody for coming in and hanging out in my live streams, because I can promise you, I know for certain that I'm nowhere near like the guys that are really good at this. There's a lot of guys that sure could have interviewed Tom a lot better than me, but I have fun with it, and I have fun watching what you guys have to say and try to keep everybody in mind as well. So, but we have to stay positive. We have to stay focused. Remember, if we keep driven and we keep looking for the positives and we keep our mind open, like I said in my video today, if you bring a problem without a solution, or at very least without the open mind for a solution, then you're just creating chaos. So if you're bringing a problem to the table and not saying that you're open-minded about trying to find a solution, then you're just part of the trouble. So no matter what's going on, no matter if you agree or disagree with Tom or Faster or whatever, it's good to have different points of view and to look into different things to see what possible outcomes we have. Okay. Just remember to stay positive, stay focused, do something positive, do something nice for somebody. the reality is we are our own ministry. We can go out next door and be able to minister and teach somebody something good and show somebody, the love of Christ. So love on each other, pat somebody on the back, shake their hand, do a good deed for somebody. Stay focused, stay driven, always looking forward. And remember, if you train like you fight, you'll fight like you train. God bless you guys, and good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Right.
Hi, Mistress Mandy.